All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to call to order the 144th meeting of the public meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. Chairman Crosby is not with us today. He's en route to a well-deserved break, and so the four of us will proceed in his absence. But of course, he's here in spirit. The first item on the agenda, as it customarily is approval of the minutes. The minutes this time of the January 22, 2015 meeting. Those minutes are in the book, and I take it we've all had a chance to look at them, and I would move their acceptance in the form in which they appear in the book, subject to the usual reservation of the power to correct typographical and other mechanical errors. So I'd make that motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion, any thoughts, any corrections, any substantive issues with the minutes? All right, then all in favor of approving the minutes in the form that they appear with that reservation, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously. That brings us to item 2 on the agenda, which is administration. Executive Director Day. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioner McHugh, fellow commissioners.
Good morning.
I actually just have a very short couple of items just to share with you relative to administrative update. Wanted to let you know that pending completion of background, we've hired an experienced candidate for our gaming agent supervisor. We're real excited about that at the slot parlor. As well, we have started the recruiting efforts to form the rest of the team that will work with him. So we're moving forward on that to make sure we're prepared when the slot parlor is ready to open. In addition, pending background, we've also added a revenue agent to our finance and administration team and are in the final stages of interviewing and selecting positions for 2 positions for our licensing unit. Another quick note is our licensing management system is in production within the agency. We are entering applications, and we are looking forward to being able to move to out-facing, public-facing, probably in early March. And finally, after all the discussion, we are continuing contract discussions with GTEC, and we are looking toward hopefully the February 19th meeting to be able to come back to the Commission with a contract. And that, unless there are any questions the Commission might have, brings me to the end of my short report and to our Ombudsman, John Ziemba.
All right, thank you. February 19th is the next meeting, so you anticipate being able to come back with the GTEC contract, or at least a substantive update on that next meeting?
Yes, we do.
Good. All right. All right, thank you very much. Let's turn then, without further ado, to the Ombudsman, Mr. Ziemba.
Thank you,
Good
Commissioner.
morning.
We've asked Mr. Robert DeSalvio, President of WinMass LLC, to join us today to update the Commission regarding the status of its upcoming Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act submission, its supplemental final environmental impact report. As the Commission is aware, every gaming license issued by the Commission, both Category 1 and Category 2, has been conditioned upon the completion of the MEPA process. On August 15, 2014, the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs required WIN to submit a supplemental FEIR, but limited the scope of the filing to traffic and transportation issues and a response to comments. Consistent with this directive, the WIN team has been working on this filing. Mr. DeSalvio will detail its efforts in this regard. In addition to the Commission's requirements relative to MEPA, the Commission also imposed a condition on the WIN license that it continue its public outreach, including in Charlestown. In response to this condition, and as part of the continuing outreach efforts of the WIN team has a meeting next week in Charlestown to present relevant details of its latest plans, which will include in the upcoming SFEIR submission. With that as a context, I welcome Mr. DeSalvio to come and join us.
All right, good morning, Mr. DeSalvio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, John, and good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to give you the update. I'm pleased to report the progress Wynn Resorts has made on the supplemental final environmental impact report. Late last week, we met with MassDOT and provided them with some additional information which will assist in their review of the overall filing. In addition, both MIPA and MassDOT have requested additional time to review our filing to ensure a thorough analysis. We plan to share a draft with them in response to this request in an effort to ensure a successful completion of the MIPA process. The project is already the subject of a comprehensive FEIR that resulted in the EEA Secretary's certificate on the final environmental impact report last August. At that time, the EEA Secretary concluded that our FEIR satisfied MIPA's requirements with respect to 10 of the 11 topics covered, including wetlands, air quality, greenhouse gas, sustainable development, stormwater, water supply, wastewater, solid and hazardous waste, historic resources, and construction management. However, the EEA Secretary did request further analysis and consultation with other state agencies on specific traffic and transit topics. We are now in the final stages of completing the SFEIR to address this request. The SFEIR will include a summary of the project, including a discussion of refinements to the project design since the filing of the FEIR, including the new hotel tower design presented to you at the last public meeting, and a comprehensive evaluation of any impacts of those refinements. The filing will also contain a materially enhanced transportation analysis for the project, prepared in consultation with MassDOT, the MBTA, and the Boston Transportation Department. That includes additional data collected since the FEIR and significant additional analysis of the transportation impacts of the project and alternative means of mitigating those impacts. The analysis includes new evaluations of all potentially affected roads, new parking evaluations, the new evaluations of public and private transportation options. All of the data and the analysis have been shared with MassDOT, and the data and analysis relevant to the MBTA and BTD have been shared with them. We have continued to consult with the BTD regarding traffic and transit issues relevant to Boston, meeting with them 7 times since November of 2014, with the last meeting being held on January 26th. In the course of those meetings, BTD requested additional analysis, which has been completed, including additional traffic counts, which were conducted in December along Broadway, Alfred Street, Route 99, and in Sullivan Square to ensure that the completion of the Alfred Street Bridge and the Tobin Bridge projects did not materially affect traffic. In addition, at the request of BTD, we completed a sensitivity analysis of transit ridership to ascertain the impacts of projected transit usage on the road network and reanalyzed anticipated parking utilization to confirm the validity of those estimates, including by comparison to other identified casinos. There was also extensive consultation with BTD regarding our plans to mitigate the impacts of the project on Sullivan Square. A number of the BTD's requested modifications to the plan were incorporated, including the installation of conduit from Sullivan Square to Austin Street to tie that part of the traffic signal network into BTD's command center, adjustment to the lane geometry along Route 99, and a reconfiguration of Sullivan Square roads to better integrate the MBTA's bus operation at Sullivan Square Station with general traffic. We will continue to meet with BTD as the design of the project, including Sullivan Square mitigation, progresses. The SFEIR will also include a comprehensive description of the project's mitigation commitments. We don't believe the MIPA process will affect our schedule. We're continuing to move forward with project design and our remediation plans in the meantime. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. DeSalvio. Questions, comments?
Mr. DeSalvio, you're planning in the next couple of weeks to file, is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm reticent to actually pick a date. We supplied some information to the DOT this past, not only at the end of last week, but at the beginning of this week. And quite honestly, with what's going on with the weather, I think everyone at MassDOT's had probably more important things to worry about, including public safety during the storm. So they said they would get back to us if they need additional information and, if required, even another meeting, but nothing's been scheduled as of yet. So we want to make sure they've had an opportunity to look at it. I mentioned earlier that we're going to do a draft filing and give that draft to the MIPA folks and MassDOT. And if they have any additional questions, then we'll pick the filing date. So I don't want to peg a date, and I certainly want to, I understand that they've been going through a lot this week.
Thank you.
Others? We have made a commitment to the Charlestown community that we would post the relevant portions of the SFEIR on our website so that they could all see them. So as soon as simultaneously with that being filed, we would like to have it and like to have the additions and changes highlighted so we can quickly get that up on the website so that folks can see it and talk about it. In addition to that, I wonder what your plans are for providing us with the additional information about the revised design. We have the two renderings, but at the moment that's all we have. So I know there's much more behind the new shape. And what are your thoughts about when we'll get a chance to look at those?
Well, I spent, as I think I mentioned at the last meeting, I was heading out to Las Vegas, and I spent the entire week, last week, with all of the different departments going over virtually every square inch of the building. We got tremendous input from the departments, but that necessitated yet again going back and looking at certain aspects of the building. So it's an evolving design process that in reality, I'm not sure it serves us well to rush it. I want to make sure that all the departments get an opportunity to provide their input. We have a wonderful team of professionals out there, and I don't think I can pick a date because I want to make sure that we go through and we give those opportunities for the architects and the wind design development team to do what they do. But the work is going on at a very, very quick pace. I want to let you know out there, and literally I spent the entire week out there on this topic and doing nothing else. So I probably at another meeting I'd be able to give you a better idea of date, but right now we're in full-fledged design mode on the interior of the building.
Well, I appreciate that, and I assume that you are, and you can see visibly what the changes are to the skin and shape, and we've already made comments about that, and others have made comments as well. But we do need to take a look at the remainder, at what's behind this, and I would, and I think the Commission would like to have in mind a date or at least a range when we might be able to see that and take a look at it and examine in more detail the backing for it. So I look forward to getting that from you, and perhaps Mr. Ziemba and you can work together to figure out when that date will be.
Be happy to work with John on that.
Right, good. Thank you very much. All right, any other questions or comments?
Just, one real quick. I know John mentioned you have a meeting coming up in Charlestown. Can
Yes.
you share with us any past or planned future outreach events and activities you have going on?
Absolutely. There's been quite a bit leading up to this meeting. A lot of more informal meetings going on in Charlestown right now. I know most of you have met John Taco, who is our Director of Community Relations. He's been spending a lot of time there, as well as in our other surrounding communities and host community. A lot of preparation has gone on through the assistance of residents in Charlestown. They have an engaged Charlestown resident group that's been very active. So we're currently, we had a meeting the other night, about a 3-hour meeting to plan the agenda for the meeting on the 11th. It's going to be held at the Community College from 6 to 9 on February 11th. We're going to cover a wide range of topics, everything from the update of our plan to what the aspects of the environmental mitigation are, to transportation and traffic and public safety and responsible gaming. We tried to ascertain from the community what were the topics that they were interested in so we could design our presentation accordingly and have it be relevant. And the outcome of that is that we're going to ask some of the residents who are more engaged if they would sign up to actually participate in smaller group discussions on specific topics. So we're going to allow this, first of all, a large opportunity to present the plan, but then a much more focused opportunity for each of the major components. If we're going to look, for example, we're talking about transportation being one, environmental being one, and then other community-related issues. So we're going to give some of the residents that are interested an opportunity to sign up, and then we're going to continue to have follow-up meetings. We're considering this the big kickoff to the start of a process, not the end of a process. And so far, it's been very well received. We're getting good feedback that we're coming and we're making ourselves available, and we're going to have an open and honest dialogue with the residents.
Thank you.
Well, that sounds like a good plan. I know that from talking to some Charlestown residents who've attended these meetings and who are active in this process, that they're eager to have it go forward. It sounds like a good framework for further discussions, and so that's what we anticipated when we put that condition in the license, and we'll look forward to hearing the results of it. I think to put all of what we've been talking about in context, it's important to understand that the license that every licensee received was subject to a whole range of conditions, including getting permits from from permit granting authorities. The commission doesn't grant the permits to do a lot of things that have to be done in order for these facilities to be built. And so the MIPA process is one, but there are many other permits that need to be obtained, and that's what is transpiring now for all the licensees. So it's important to understand the limitation of the commission's powers with respect to that, and why those conditions are in, and why those conditions are in the statute. Because, of course, the statute does require that all local and state permits and federal permits necessary be granted by those permit granting authorities. So thank you for that report.
I do have
Yeah.
one question, maybe for your next update, but you mentioned in your initial remarks that you are still trending on schedule, the outer dates being somewhere around 2017, if I remember correctly. As some of these activities continue to evolve, I'd be very interested in getting an update at some point on the detailed schedule as you move forward.
Sure, we would be happy to do that, but the real good news there is that we had parallel tracks going on. While we're working on the SFEIR, we're still moving forward rapidly on the design phase and certainly on the remediation front as well. Great. So, and since that's the front end of the work that has to be done, this filing is not getting in the way of that, and the work continues. Even with I checked even last night with the GZA that's working on the site doing the soil characterization, and with the snow, they're able to continue on as well. Slowed them down a little bit for a few days, but they're able to do borings and just keep on going. So the work continues.
Great.
All right, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ziemba, back to you, sir.
Commissioners, as you're aware, Monday was the deadline for the Community Mitigation Fund applications. In total, we received 24 applications, including 21 reserve applications and 3 applications for specific impacts. As a reminder, when the Commission established the guidelines for the 2015 Community Mitigation Fund, it established 2 different categories of funding. Number 1, funding for specific construction-related impacts that have occurred or are occurring by the application deadline February 2nd, 2015. And second, a one-time $100,000 per community reserve for each surrounding community that reached a nearby community agreement with the licensee, and all communities that petition to become surrounding communities. The reserve could be used for specific impacts when those impacts are determined, or could be used for planning-related activities, either planning to avoid or minimize potential negative impacts from a facility, or planning to take better advantage of the opportunities that may arise from a facility. In regard to the one-time reserve, once a planning need is determined or a specific impact found, communities will contact the Ombudsman's office to utilize the reserve. Application materials will be completed at that time and put before the Commission for review. Communities may use the reserve fund in 2015 or thereafter. I must note that we still have to review even the reserve applications for their compliance with our guidelines. As you remember, the reserve application was a very simple form with the check the box, but we still need to review those reserve requests for compliance, and we'll make an official determination at a later date. In regard to the specific impacts, staff will expeditiously begin its review of these applications. The applications will be forwarded to the respective licensee for their comment. In the 2015 Community Mitigation Fund guidelines, the Commission estimated that decisions could be made approximately by July. Potentially, the reviews could be completed prior to that date. As we begin to review the materials, we'll provide an update to the Commission, but we'll try to work as quickly as we can. We'll also review any comments we receive from other interested parties, such as comments from regional planning agencies, and further, we'll evaluate the submissions in the context of any host and surrounding community agreements that were executed. Commissioners, we received one request for an expedited review, given some pending deadlines. We received a request for mitigation from Sheriff Ash, who joins us today, regarding the Western Massachusetts Correctional Alcohol Center. Sheriff Ash will provide us a little bit of some of the background regarding the facility and the situation with this current lease. In summary, however, the Sheriff's successful regional program is currently in jeopardy because of the potential costs of relocating the facility to a new location. As you know, his current facility is in the middle of the proposed Springfield MGM site. MGM has expressed concern regarding its ability to move forward with its building plans, given the fact that the sheriff has not yet been able to relocate to a new location. By way of background, a number of parties have been working with the sheriff to review his situation and determine potential solutions, including commission staff. Those discussions have continued in earnest. Given the productive discussions, we invited Sheriff Ash to provide the latest information to the commission and to explain his community mitigation fund request. This effort received some very difficult news just late yesterday afternoon, and I'm going to ask Sheriff Ash to give us a little bit about that very difficult news. But even with this difficult news, we're very pleased that Sheriff Ash has agreed to continue to join us today and explain to us his request and give us a little detail about his very successful facility. The sheriff understands that the commission is not going to be in a position to make any determinations regarding the request, especially given the news that we just received. But we're very pleased that the sheriff is here. And on a personal note, we really have appreciated the opportunity to work with the sheriff and all of his staff. It's been a very good dialogue, and we're very impressed with their commitment to their mission and look forward to continuing to work with them. So in that regard, Sheriff.
Good morning, Sheriff. Welcome.
Yeah.
Morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, and real honor for me to be here. And thank you, John, for that summary, and thank you for allowing us to be here. And again, my name is Sheriff Mike Ash, and this is my Chief Financial Officer, Billy Christofori, is here as well. And,
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you.
So just by way of background, is that, I've been sheriff for 40 years, started in 1975, and one of the things that has been focus really is about corrections versus warehousing inmates. And we were presented an opportunity in 1985 under the guidance and direction of Governor Michael Dukakis to launch, if you will, a Western Massachusetts Correctional Alcohol Center. If you think back of 1985, he personally had a history of alcoholism in his own family and saw the issue, and he stepped up and wanted to provide a treatment facility for people that were committed the third offense on the DUI. And there was a real surge in our community at that time, and I'm very pleased to say that we stepped forth and put together a plan, and we ended up citing this facility in the south end of Springfield, and it's the old YWCA building on Howard Street, and we've been there now for 29 years. And it's a regional facility, it's co-ed, and approximately about 15 years ago, we expanded it to also include substance abuse and co-occurring, along with the alcoholism and so on. It's an open facility, and when I say regional, it includes the 4 counties in Western Mass, the Berkshire, Franklin, Hampshire, Hamden, and it also includes Worcester. So we have 5 counties. You're looking at a population around 182 people that come there from their respective county jails where they are detoxed, classification occurs, and movement to, quote, an open setting. So most of the offenders there suffer from addiction, if you will, but nonviolent type of offenses. And I'm very pleased to tell you that since we've been there, there's been little or no occurrences of any upsetting things that have occurred in the neighborhood. And you can imagine when we first cited the facility, there was a great threat in terms of the neighborhood and so on. But again, but we're very pleased with that. We have been able to impact 17,225 offenders with the treatment we provided there. There's a 90% program compliance there, and a recidivism rate is clearly shows that when you challenge people, raise standards, and provide educational, individual, and group counseling is what occurs there in the first 7 weeks of the program. And then following the 7 weeks, they then are involved in community restitution programs, working on behalf of, quote, cities and towns and housing authorities in the county, as well as working with nonprofit agencies like the Salvation Army, police departments, and so on. In addition is that we have an escort service and are very tied to, quote, the NA or AA and NA program. That's the real foundation and basis of the program. It's not an isolated fortress in the woods kind of facility. There's a recognition that all of these people are coming back to the community, and the question is how do they come back? But more particularly is they're coming back with what we call a continuity of services, and it's a regional as well. In other words, we have what we call this goes on as well as in Pittsfield and Greenfield and Northampton and Worcester, et cetera, as well in terms of the whole. Now, we've been a cooperative partner, in recognition of the casino being there, and that we've been all working in a very steadfast way to be responsive and work in a cooperative manner, regarding, quote, this new economic engine, which I think is terrific for our area. And, I've lived in Springfield my whole life, and particularly know the South End very, very well, and I think it's going to be a tremendous asset to our community and complement all the other great things going on in our city, being led by Mayor Albano and so on. I'm very, very proud. I like to feel we've been a vibrant part of the city and of the region, and from the standpoint of I like to feel really stepping up and looking at a new paradigm in criminal justice and being very integrated regarding working with police, parole, probation, and so on, on behalf of public safety. And I like to feel that clearly shows, for example, back in 2007, 2008, our census in Hamden County Sheriff's Department was in the 2,200 category, but because of our work over the years on the whole reintegration, we've been able to reduce our population to around 1,500 inmates. So we're down in the neighborhood about 700 inmates. So it clearly shows that we're on the right path of challenging inmates, establishing credible, evidence-based kind of programming, and establishing housing, jobs, and supportive services. And we were the first in the nation in establishing day reporting, which is now adopted by the federal government. And we also have a cutting-edge after-incarceration support service program that we have right at Winchester Square, which means simply is that at any time when an offender leaves us, he's no longer under the Sheriff's Department of Parole Probation, he can go to 736 State Street and receive help, regarding housing, jobs, and supportive services. And as we know, in substance abuse or in alcoholism, you're always subject to relapse and so on. But the big thing is not judging that, but being there in terms of providing support and help and so on. John mentioned about where we are today, and I'm regrettably tell you is that we had a facility up on Mill Street, which is really just about, if you will, 1.5 miles from Howard Street, and it's a wonderful facility. When I say wonderful, it was an old nursing home on Mill Street, the Ring Nursing Home. At one point, it served as well as a halfway house, if you will, for some of our offenders over the years. And this met our specifications, and we thought this would be a very nice move for us. We had a developer that we were working with, who is our present developer on Howard Street, and he announced to me yesterday that he is pulling out. Okay, so which simply means is that we have to start the process all over again, and I have been informed by DCAM, Division of Capital Planning, that just with the advertisement that would go on, that would be at least 45 days that we'd have to, this request for proposal. And so I'm looking at it, it's going to take at least anywhere from 65 to 90 days and so on. So that's not good news. On the other hand, anybody that knows me, I have the helmet on, and every day we're working hard trying to make this happen, and I really feel that we will. So we've already talked to DCAM. Again, the request for proposal will go out very quickly. We are going to try to, again, see if we can get another developer for the Mill Street site, but also we're going to expand and look at the greater Springfield area in terms of trying to relocate the facility. We have been in touch with the governor's office. I wouldn't want to speak for the governor, but my sense is he is very open to wanting to help us with this project. And we recently did have a meeting, and his deputy financial person from A&F, Rachel Madden, was there and mentioned that she would do everything she could to help us, particularly with Governor Baker's posture on opiate epidemic and so on. I know DCAM has been very, very supportive, and I know obviously the Gaming Commission was also at the meeting, been very, very helpful and so on. And so that's really where we are right at this point. And with that, let me just have my chief financial officer just talk about our request, at least give you a little background of the finances and so on that we were looking for based on what I'm paying now for rent, and just trying to project out as to where we were going, as to why we were coming back, and seeing if we could get some help. And I realize that I suppose it's like MGM when they're first trying to do their work in the community. Everyone's looking to think that they're going to be able to get into one's pocket, and I'm sure the commissioners though different regarding the mitigation money. I know you're limited, as to what you can do with so many needs and so on, but any help that you could provide for us, it would be very, very helpful, and so on.
First of all, Sheriff, I don't know if this is on. If you wanted to talk about the eviction notice, I think that would be an issue that the sheriff would want to speak about, that we have also received from, I think, MGM.
Yes, yeah. Well, as you well know, I mean, they have a time schedule, and again, according to the statutes, have to meet those, and we understand that, and we have received an eviction notice for March 1st is our date. And
March 31st, I think,
March
was
30th,
given to us.
okay, yeah.
Right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Sheriff.
Yes, we're aware of that, so thank
Yeah.
you
Okay.
for
Yeah, good.
putting that on the table.
The fiscal piece, Commissioners, really came down to our present rent is $666,000, which I think you see in the letter. The new proposal would have been about 1.7 million. which is about 1.1 million than we have in our budget. We did request to A&F originally about 600,000 in fiscal year 2016's budget, but unfortunately, that number came in higher, about $500,000 higher. First of all, we don't know if we have that money from A&F, obviously with the fiscal situation that's occurring in the state. But there were two options that I think we presented in the mitigation form. One would have been a lump sum payment towards the build-out, which in this case, in the present bid that went out, which obviously is gone now, the build-out was about $7.5 million. We were looking for about $4 million from the mitigation fund to help offset the lease, which would have brought it down to a more reasonable number, which would have fit inside our budget. The other option that was brought to us, thanks to John Zamba and the Gaming Commission, was to potentially go out and have basically a loan, a 10-year loan of $500,000 a year for 10 years. And then I think at that point, the loan would be paid off at a certain point beyond the 10 years. So those were the two options that we were looking at. One would be a lump sum payment, which would obviously reduce the lease over the life, and the other would be $500,000 for 10 years to help keep that cost down. The only thing that I would say, which would have been different prior to yesterday in the news that we got, is that one of the things that would be helpful is that if the Gaming Commission does see in their infinite wisdom to help us out in some way, that we could at least have that information to us before the bid comes back, because that would be part of the process, I think, with any of the vendor, that if they knew there were certain monies in hand, and not only the Gaming Commission money, but obviously money that might be placed in our budget for FY16 when we would, hopefully eventually be relocated. So I don't know if you have any other financial questions for me.
No, thank you very much for that presentation. Nobody's ever accused us of having infinite wisdom
Yeah.
before, so I'm very grateful for that as well. Questions or comments?
I do, and so from your remarks and since yesterday, it looks like you have to go out to bid for a new facility regardless, correct?
Yes. Right.
And you had limited the area in the past, because I understand this was your second bid, the most recent, to the downtown Springfield area. Is that correct?
What we wanted to do, because it was a community-based program, we were looking to keep it in the greater Springfield area. And I think the demographics that we have may have given them was a 1.5 mile radius, because most of our clients are from the inner city. So in terms of transportation issues, it makes it easier for people to get to their jobs because it is a community-based program. So now what we are going to do is we're going to increase that scope to actually include some of the abutting towns or cities, potentially West Springfield, Chicopee, Holyoke. That'll be determined by DCAM eventually.
But the key aspect is the siting difficulty you have with these particular facilities. And this is why this particular facility was very acceptable, because we have a good relationship with the neighborhoods. And it's already, if you will, been encouraged by the siting of this, because we already have a track record, if you will, of being a sheriff's department that was a good neighbor in the community.
Right.
So that we have a track record there.
I understand. I guess what I'm trying to get at is what indication may we all have relative to the new rent, the new rent amount, whether we will be contemplating a similar, smaller, or larger gap between what you currently pay and what you are now.
From a financial standpoint, I think what happened was, if you take a look at the rent that we're paying for the $666,000, there's a lot of history there. So there wasn't,
I understand.
In terms of the build-out portion. So if you take a look at 43,000 square feet, it comes out to about $15 a square foot. You people might be more educated in terms of square footage, but you'll find out that the new one was $25 a square foot, which I think is pretty reasonable. I would say that depending on how big the build-out is, you're probably looking between a $20 and $30 square foot lease, at least. Because you got to remember, this is a 24-hour facility, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It includes plumbing, individual rooms. A lot of people look at it and they forget it's not an office space that you're looking at. You're actually looking at a housing space, which increases the per square footage.
Tell me those figures again.
The present lease that we pay now is about $15 a square foot. The new lease came in at $29.64 without utilities. If you include the utilities, it brings us up to about $35 a square foot.
And you had the same square footage?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Is that something you would contemplate modifying?
Yeah, this would be fine. We could do that because it would be,
I think a downward modification wouldn't be acceptable, just to the point that we're probably at about 160 of 182 right now, in terms of the capacity is 182.
Is that individuals or
No.
1,000 square feet?
How many square feet? 43,000 square
Okay.
feet.
yeah, right.
Individuals. So you were talking individuals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And most of those rooms, just so you'll know, if you went into it, it's like a college dorm in terms of there's bunk beds. It's not individual rooms. I think in certain rooms, there's actually six individuals to a room.
So those are the numbers for the development that was proposed, but now we're probably on a new track, and those are ballpark numbers.
Yes.
Yes,
without,
that's right.
Without
Right.
being precisely geared to a specific location. Other thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, Sheriff Ash, first I just wanted to commend you. Tremendous program. I was very interested in listening to your thoughts on recidivism, the low rate, and the reduced incarceration. I just wanted to commend you for your efforts there. Secondly, you did mention that there was a chance that another developer could come in for that same property.
Well,
So,
that's-
did you mention that,
Yeah,
sir?
I mean, I would just say is these are the things that we're trying to do everything we can to hold on to the Mill Street site.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do now. We'll have to see what happens, because right now, and I think John might have some insight in this, John, would be that the present owner is in financial trouble. And basically, it's because of the goodwill of MGM has been helping us with the mortgage in behalf of that. But my sense is that there's a deadline of early February, and it could be within a week, that, again, that mortgage they'll be faced with that. And unless there's somebody that's going to help with that, it could very well be that he will lose the building. And then now we're faced with another event that it will evolve from a legal standpoint that could also further delay this, okay? But again, this is something that I'm sure I'll be talking to MGM and so on in the coming days, okay, trying to help, as they have been, okay, with this building as we continue, if you will, to target this building as an area that we want to relocate. So we're going to, so yes, we would like to hold on to this building, but also I think we are also looking at trying to look at options as well, on this RFP.
Commissioner Cameron, I guess what's important about the building is because it was set up as a nursing home, the build-out was $7.5 million for 180 beds as well. I think if someone from a construction area would come in to build a facility like that, I know we just completed a women's facility for 140 beds, and it was in the 20 million area to construct from ground up. So I think when you're looking at, I think if a vendor were to look at it, it's a nice building probably to do the project for them, for their standpoint, in terms of, their fiscal austerity, in terms of having a good building. But not only the location, but the way it's set up, it almost fits the program is how it sits right now in that the old YWCA with the multi-bed rooms. So I think from someone who was going to look at it to bid on it, I think that would be an ideal spot for them.
Okay.
I think it's important to note, and first of all, I want to also join Commissioner Cameron and talk about the success of your programs. Growing up in Western Mass, I just figured that this is what every county sheriff did until I got out into the world and realized that Sheriff Ash was quite a remarkable pace setter for his colleagues. You've been out to bid twice on this parcel the second time, you wind up with the property that we have, or the property on Mill Street. And, you know, from what you've just stated, even if you go to another round, or you have to go out to a new round, you expand your search, I think you covered the issue of going out and reaching out to that community to make them feel comfortable about this program coming into the community. And even that kind of community involvement and community communication phase can add time to,
Right.
even though, you know, it's a
Right.
kind of a statutory deadline, you're adding days, getting out and talking to those neighborhood groups and making them feel comfortable about the program.
Yeah.
Whereas now we have a spot where the neighborhood's used to it.
Right.
And, you know, it's just driving around, you see folks from that center who are out, you know, doing yard work, community cleanup work, so, you know, it's certainly been accepted. So your eviction date from the current site is
March 31st.
March 31st.
March 31st?
Right.
Okay. And it's obviously a property that is still going through some type of historical review and oversight and process with MHC and the local preservation,
And I think
local
as,
historical folks.
Commissioner, I think as we go forward, and again, trying to work in a cooperative way with everybody, because I know, too, everybody's has this time schedule, okay? And of course, at least I was just looking at sheriff in terms of the staff and the programmatical aspect, that if at least we'd got a commitment, you know, in terms of where we were going, that's really key, okay? And then I would do everything I can to try to help, you know, with the time schedule, okay? And this is what I find. I find right now I'm just, on one hand, I have the pressure of the March 31st date, and yet I don't have any actual or crystallized plan. And I guess this is where we are right now, so that's what I'm trying to make happen, and which I know everyone understands. But you're right, Commissioner, that's a key thing. But again, these are all things, these are the unknown, you know, as we go forth and what we have to deal with. But I'm ready to, whatever we have to deal with, I can only tell you that we got the helmet on, trying to make it happen. Okay, that's all.
What's the condition of the building right now?
The present building?
Yeah.
It's in good shape.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the things we have is we have a lot of inmates who do a lot of great work there. That building, we've been a real partner with the present vendor, and you know, we maintain a lot of it ourselves.
No, I mean the Mill Street
Mill
property.
Street?
Well, Lil, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and but again, nothing's been done to the building, and to my knowledge, 15, 20 years. You know, so, but again, compared to where we are, because we're not looking for any Hilton or anything else, you know.
Right.
But I think, too, I'm just looking for some reasonable accommodations, and so there is some work that needs to be done, and of course, that was all part of the build-out, you know, that they were going to do some upgrade of that, and of course, the jail staff was going to work with all of that as well, and and I had said earlier, one of the key aspects that we have at our present facility is an auditorium. This lacks an auditorium, and so you can imagine about the educational sessions that take place, that's very much necessary. It's an essential aspect of where we want to go, and this was the part of the renovations that were going to be done, the addition. Yeah.
Well, this is a model program for the kind of forward-thinking corrections, approach to corrections. You've been a pioneer in this. There's been a great deal of conversation in the press, in the public, in the legislatures about a smarter way to deal with the problem of addiction in the criminal justice context. And this is the kind of program that really needs to be preserved. And I join the others in congratulating you. When my former life, when often you ran into problems and issues with people who really had an addiction problem rather than a criminal problem, the difficulty in finding beds was overwhelming to get the treatment programs. You've got one. You've got a successful one, and it's in everybody's interest to keep this program going for that region. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of players, but I can assure you that as John Ziemba has been in the past, he will continue to be a representative of the Commission in helping to try and find a solution to this, and helping to try to find a solution with all the other parties that are needed for the solution to occur as quickly as we possibly can. So we look forward to having John keep us up to date on what's proceeding. We look forward to hearing from you again directly if that's necessary.
Right.
But you have our full support in the effort to keep this a very valuable and very important program alive. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, too. It's an honor to be here, and thanks for your support and help. And again, John has already been helpful. We just look forward to working with John. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Commissioners.
both very much.
Your office has been great to us, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if I just got one final point. Obviously, this is a very complex endeavor involving many parties. I thank the sheriff for noting the constraints that we're under in regard to the fund. We did come up with some constructs of how it could be orchestrated with more of a longer term. We're open to discussing all opportunities. I obviously did not put together a dollar amount. That's for the commission to determine.
Right.
But we're going to continue to work with the sheriff. And in general, there's been some short-term constraints on the mitigation fund. After the facilities are up and operational, there'll be much more funding available to communities and others that need funding to deal with mitigation requests. So in that construct, we thank the sheriff for recognizing
The
all of
constraints
these
that we're
issues.
under, yeah, surely. And so we look forward to supporting you whatever role we can play constructively in this within the constraints that we have as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So that concludes that portion.
Okay, did you have more? Because I had one question about the pending requests. But if you have more to...
I don't.
Okay. You said that with respect to the applications for mitigation funds, you gave a ballpark to when we'd have decisions on those. The reserve funds, though, are those decisions going to be made earlier, or what's your plan for those?
Yeah, much earlier. We have to check compliance issues, but even though it's a simple form, for example, we had one community that we had been in contact with that noted that it had mailed an application, and whether or not it was received or postmarked, we just need to just double check on that.
But those will be decided
Very soon.
quickly. Okay, good.
Can I mention something on that, which is something that you alluded to and we have not finalized, and that'll be part of the review, but to the extent that we can avoid duplication of planning efforts would be ideal, needless to say. If we have a number of adjoining communities doing the same kind of planning, I would really exhort you to look at opportunities to do that regionally, where it may make more sense for everybody. That's not the prism that each one of these applicants for planning monies necessarily, by necessity, have to view this. But as we get into the details of what scope of work they're contemplating, I think that's an important thing to consider.
I couldn't agree more. When we rolled out the Community Mitigation Fund application guidelines, we anticipated that some of the planning activities could be done regionally through regional planning agencies. We met with regional planning agencies, talked to regional planning agencies when we put together our guidelines, and we would hope that communities take advantage of these regional approaches through the regional planning agencies or through other endeavors. But we'll work on that as well.
Well, my default would be, as we near approval of some of these planning monies, that whoever has a regional approach would get, more favorable consideration for their grants, because it's a twofer every time somebody's thinking regionally.
Right.
I also was happy to see you're going to have the RPAs involved. I am a little concerned about, and we talked about this, about a July 2015 deadline. I know that's probably at the outer end of the decision and review time frame, but your plan calls for also including Gaming Policy Advisory Committee, Community Mitigation Subcommittee, even the local mitigation subcommittees. Are they all all seats filled? When you take into consideration, when their meeting dates are going to be, is that kind of why you have a July 2015 deadline out there?
Now, what happens with the local committees regarding the current funding round, I think that remains to be determined at those committee meetings. But that's a very good point. Specifically with the Community Mitigation Fund, we anticipated that the first-year funding program would not necessarily be the funding program for future years.
Right.
And that we will get a lot of valuable input from those local committees in constructing the future round programs. For example, this program was limited to construction-only specific impacts. Right. As we get closer to operational date, necessarily we will have to expand to operational impacts. But they, as you'll see when we review each of these applications, there'll be many, many thorny issues that we'll experience in our reviews and trying to make determinations how to use all of these funds wisely. We will benefit greatly from the advice we receive from the local committees, the subcommittee of community mitigation, and the Gaming Policy Advisory Commission. The good news on the local committees, we have received the designees for each one of those local committees, and we recently sent out letters, or I think they should have been sent out in the last day or two, unless the snow prevented us from doing that, to each of those members. And the plan is that the Ombudsman's office would meet with each of those individual members to get their understanding of the act, what their role will be as the local committee, what suggestions they have going forward regarding the mitigation fund, other issues regarding surrounding community issues, host community issues, and we will bring that experience into a joint meeting shortly thereafter. I'm not certain when that meeting will be, but our goal is to have those individual meetings within the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then join to have the larger meetings. We still need some representatives for the subcommittee of community mitigation. Some of those appointments are commission-based. We've done some analysis on who we could recommend. At a future meeting, I'll bring those names to you for consideration. And then we'll work with the governor's office on other appointees that are gubernatorial appointments. And then finally, we have to check with a lot of agency representatives and other representatives that are noted in the statute that are, obviously we just had a change of administration, so names that we had previously, we have to double check on those names. It's just been a matter of days since the change of the administration, so, and I know that there's been a lot of things on everybody's plate, but we'll follow through with them to try to get some finality to all of those names. Okay. But it goes along with the earlier remarks that almost everything that we do involves point of contacts very, very far and wide. And although that's very complex, at the end, after these conversations, I think the goal will to have a community mitigation fund that grows and changes over time and that adapts to needs as circumstances demand.
Okay, good.
Long answer. Sorry about that.
No, it's helpful. I mean, we haven't touched on those the community mitigation groups, and it's important for everybody to understand that the mitigation effort and the mitigation grants that we ultimately make are in part going to be determined and advised by groups from the local communities that have applied for the funds, and we really haven't touched on that yet. And we're now in the process of putting those groups together, of getting people from the communities, getting all the representatives from the various constituencies that the statute requires, and that is, as you say, a complex process. But in the end, what we're going to have is a statewide group to advise us on how these funds should be distributed, and a statewide group that will be from the communities that are and the areas that are going to receive the funds. That's a terribly important part of this well thought out piece of legislation that we're now in the process of implementing. So that's a very helpful discussion, so thank you. All right, anything further?
No.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is Workforce, Supplier, and Diversity Development. Director Griffin. That'll probably take us half an hour or 20 minutes. You want to take a break now? All right, yeah,
Are
sure.
you still planning to go through lunch? Without lunch, rather? Maybe, can we take 5 minutes?
Yeah, yeah. All right. Before we start that, feel free to be seated, but we are going to take a short break. We'll take a break for 5 minutes and then resume. All right, we're ready to resume now with agenda item number 5, Workforce Supplier and Diversity Development, Director Griffin. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, you can pull it up.
Pull it a little closer.
I'm joined by representatives from Wynn Resorts who are here today to present the diversity plan for design and construction for Wynn Mass LLC. Mr. Robert DeSalvio is here, President of Wynn. Jenny Peterson, Manager of Development. Ulrico Izaguirre, Vice President of Government and Community Affairs. And is Jackie here? Oh, Jackie is here. And Jackie Crum, Senior Vice President and General Counsel at Wynn Resorts. So I'm going to make some brief comments outlining the process that we undertook, the public comments that we received, and highlight key points in the plan. And then I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Bob DeSalvio, who will present a short presentation. And then at the end of the discussion, I'd be glad to present my recommendation. So as you're aware, the Massachusetts gaming legislation that the Commission is charged with implementing highlights a goal of maximizing economic opportunities for both residents and businesses in Massachusetts and makes diversity and inclusion a priority. So as part of the Commission's agreement to award the Category 1 license to Wynn Mass LLC, the gaming establishment is required to submit 4 plans for Commission approval. We're here to talk about those that focus on the design and construction period, including a provision of a plan for affirmative marketing program to identify contracting and casino purchasing opportunities for MBE, WBE, and VBE vendors for design and construction. And an additional plan for the workforce, including an affirmative action program for equal opportunity. So as part of the process, the Commission staff notified the licensees, both licensees, on November 17th that these 2 plans were due to the Commission on January 12th. Wynn submitted the plan as required, and staff sent the plan out for comment to groups such as the Vendor Advisory Team, the Mass Gaming Vendor Advisory Team, the Gaming Diversity Coalition, the Policy Group of Tradeswomen's Issues, and the Action for Regional Equity, a local coalition, many of whom are here in the audience today. So included in your materials today is a red-line version of the diversity strategy, which illustrates any clarifications or changes that were made after the original submission as a result of feedback from both Commission staff and any of the groups I mentioned above. So we received 4 written comments from members of those groups, and I'd say all 4 comments were positive. All of the responses indicated that Wynn has consulted their organization for input and best practice information. One group in particular, you'll note these comments are in your packet, the group Action for Regional Equity advocated for Wynn to set higher diversity standards during the construction phase due to the higher diversity in the greater Boston region as compared to the state. They also urge Wynn to identify sources of funding for community outreach in the plan. So I'm just going to go on and talk a little bit about the plan now. Wynn's diversity strategy is detailed and concrete regarding both the implementation And for example, they incorporate diversity goals into relevant contracts and agreements, and they have established mechanisms to remedy shortfalls during this process. WIN has committed to robust, regular oversight and reporting. And WIN's plan is to monitor workforce and vendor diversity during design and construction from the highest levels of the organization, including President DeSalvio and a diversity coordinator who will report directly to him. On the ground, monitoring appears strong as well. The diversity coordinator will review overall compliance, monitor effectiveness, and make recommendations to modify the program. This diversity coordinator for WIN will work directly with the construction monitor, and it appears there's also staff designated for the construction monitor as well. And the diversity coordinator will participate in the Commission's Access and Opportunity Committee, which is our internal monitoring committee. WIN has committed to monthly diversity meetings involving the president, the WIN Design and Development team, the diversity coordinator, the local architect, and construction manager. WIN has also outlined the partnership, roles, and diversity expectations relative to their relationship with the building trades. One point to note is that during the design phase, WIN has not set a goal for the veteran business participation. During the construction phase, their supplier diversity goal for veterans is 1%. Supplier diversity goals for the combined minority women business enterprise are equivalent to the state combined goals of 17% during the design phase and 10.4% combined goal for the construction contracts. In the case of minority business enterprises, WIN reaches higher in both the design and construction phase. For the construction workforce, WIN adopted the state diversity goals for the construction period, which includes 15.3% for minority, 6.9% women, and 3% veterans. So unless you have comments or questions for me at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Bob DeSalvio.
All right, I have some questions, but I'll save those for you, Director Griffin, but I'll save those until we've heard from the WIN team.
Great.
Good morning again, Commissioners. I just want to introduce the team that's here with me that put a lot of effort and time into the plan. But before I do that, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Jill's efforts in helping and guiding us through this process. She was a great partner and really did put a lot of time and effort to guide the team in the right direction. So thank you, Jill, for that. Appreciate it. Jackie Crum, as you mentioned, is here with us. Jackie has always been our trusted business advisor through the compilation of the plan and helps me a lot with good business insight and historical framework for the WIN Resorts programs that we've got back in Nevada. You know Jenny Peterson. Jenny's been on the project with me from day one. As Jill mentioned earlier, the diversity coordinator, and Jenny has volunteered to be the diversity coordinator for our project. That is a very significant role. It will require a lot of effort and integration with the commission, staff, and with us, and with our contractors and designers. So we thank Jenny for that and for the tremendous work that she put in getting this plan together. It's really, truly been a pleasure working with her on this. And then Jill mentioned earlier about Rico joining our team. Rico's been with WIN Resorts for about 3 months now. And before I turn the presentation over actually to Rico, I think it's important that I give you a little bit about his background, since this is the first time that he is here in front of the commission on behalf of WIN Resorts. So I'm going to, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Rico. Rico brings with him more than 15 years of high-profile experience in government relations, communications, corporate social responsibility, and development fields. Most recently, he served as the National Political Director for Caesars Entertainment, Inc., where he was responsible for managing political affairs efforts and advocacy communications for Caesars Political Action Committee and overseeing political efforts relating to legislation. Prior to that, Rico held several high-level leadership roles in various State Department and state and federal campaign management roles. He served as an aide in Vice President Gore's West Wing office in 1999. Rico holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from Trinity University and a master's in public administration from Arizona State University. And he's been a great addition to the team. He's helped us a lot here in Mass. He had some great background that he was able to share with the team. And on behalf of Wynn, he's going to handle the executive overview of this presentation. So take it away, Rico.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Good
Bob.
morning, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Director Griffin, thank you so much for the introduction. Commissioners, good morning. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today, especially on the heels of a Patriots Super Bowl win, which was very exciting to see yesterday downtown.
Lifted everybody's spirit.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Thank you. I guess we can go to the first slide. Thank you so much. We have put a lot of work into developing our WIN design and construction and diversity strategy, and we're very excited to present it to you here today. This is a topic which is near and dear to my heart personally, and it's an honor to be able to speak a little bit about it this morning to you today. It is a plan that we have developed, and not only that reaffirms our commitment to diversity and inclusion, that has been a core business function of our DNA, but has also a plan that's been developed by listening, speaking, and engaging with our community partners and the diverse community organizations that we have in the last several months been working very closely with. We feel it's important to provide a little bit of background and context regarding WIN's historical commitment to diversity. Our diversity commitment is among the strongest of any gaming company in the U.S. We are very proud of our diversity among our management level employees in Las Vegas, where we employ over 12,000 people. 36% of our managers, directors, and executive level employees are minorities, and 42% of our managers, directors, and executive level employees are women. We're also very proud of our commitment to providing opportunities for growth and advancement within Wynn Resorts, and we promote over 66 employees every month to new opportunities for new jobs and new advancement career opportunities. We also provide a variety of opportunities in training and development for our employees, which include opportunities for English language learner classes that we cover the cost to, as well as citizenship classes, which we also cover the cost for both the classes as well as the course fees and the exam fees for citizenship exams for our employees as well. Next slide, please. We also have a very strong commitment to working with diverse vendors. In Las Vegas alone, we have relationships with over 400 diverse businesses. In 2013, we channeled nearly $30 million to minority, women, and veteran-owned business enterprises, which roughly is 12% of our procurement spend. And that figure is most likely greater, given that many of the diverse businesses in Nevada's are not formally certified as such. However, we're very proud to provide assistance to organizations, to minority and disadvantaged businesses to help them receive their certifications with our procurement teams. Next slide, please. We've engaged with the community and community groups and partners to develop our goals for strategy in reaching these goals during the design and construction phase of the development. Among them, there are a few up here on the board. We are grateful for the support of the local partners, including the MGC Vendor Advisory Committee, the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council, the Hispanic American Chamber Institute, the Massachusetts Supplier Diversity Office, and the Policy Group on Tradeswomen Issues, and others. And we look forward to continued engagement with these partners as we look to implement our strategy and to reach our goals. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we are thrilled to be in Massachusetts and very eager to bring our commitment to diversity to the Commonwealth, as well as support the vision of diversity created by the state and this Gaming Commission. We realize that we are new to the region and we need to build our diversity capability. We are a leading company in the hospitality industry, setting the gold standard, and we expect to set a similar gold standard for other large-scale developers and operators within the Commonwealth. As we finalize our design and embark on the site cleanup this spring and the construction for the resort in the summer, we expect to build a regional diversity capacity, working with diverse business partners and contractors and a diverse workforce to provide opportunities to participate in this large-scale five-star development. It is our hope that the businesses and workers that we work with will go on to participate in one of the many new developments underway in the region over the next many years, taking with them their expanded capacity and skill set. Next slide, please. Our goals are the result of research that we've done supported by the disparity study conducted by the Division of Capital Asset Management, DCAM, and we reflect the state goals for large-scale public projects set by DCAM. We've taken into account the availability of minority, women, and veteran business enterprises and the workforce diversity of our region. We took an opportunistically aggressive but realistic approach to ensuring that we would be able to achieve our goals, particularly given the competition for workers and contractors that will be driven by the high volume of development projects over the next several years. We will strive to achieve and aspire to exceed these goals. Again, these goals are, we view them as a base and not a ceiling. For participation goals, as far as the consultant and the contractor participation goes on the design contracts for minority business enterprises, we've set a goal of 7.9%. For women business enterprises, for 10%. For contractor participation on the construction contracts, we set a goal of 5% for minority business enterprises, 5.4% for women business enterprises, and 1% for veteran business enterprises. In our workforce participation for construction phase, we've set a goal of 15.3% for minorities, 6.9% for women, and 3% for veterans. When we set these goals, we applied, and as applied to a project of this scale, there will obviously be a significant economic benefit to these diverse vendors. Next slide, please. Similar to setting the goals, the implementation and strategies of reaching these goals has been informed by our relationships and discussions with the local community groups who will be instrumental and have been instrumental in helping us to reach and develop these goals. We have also looked at examples set by the successful UMass Boston campus project, the best practices document created by the UMass Access and Opportunity Committee, and the best practices for a diverse workforce as outlined by the Policy Group on Trade Women's Issues. The implementation of this plan can be described in 5 broad categories. The first category, clearly communicating our standards. We've met with Brian Doherty, the head of the Metropolitan Area Building Trades, to communicate our goals, as well as held broader meetings with other building trades groups. We will include our goals in all of our RFPs and in our conversations with potential consultants and contractors. We also recently held a briefing with the Mayor of Everett to discuss these goals as well. The second phase includes diversity goals within the relevant contract agreements to ensure that the goals are written into our contracts as well as into contracts with subcontractors as discussed by our plan. And secondly, of course, to work with organizations and subcontractors and contractors that have a record of positive engagement in diversity and have a positive track record. It will be given serious consideration in subcontractor selection process. Second will include, the third will be to engage diverse businesses and workforce populations. We will host vendor forums and vendor work fairs the first half of this year. We will continue to engage regularly with the community groups and will participate in the Access and Opportunity Committee meetings that are happening every other month and provide that continued forum for engagement. Fourth, we will support the development of women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses and a diverse workforce through the Building Pathways program, as well as pre-apprenticeship programs, and expanded access to those pre-apprenticeship programs. In addition, we want to expand our database of diverse contractors, expand access to the project for small and disadvantaged businesses, and support programs that support access to capital for minority, women, and veteran business enterprises through the Minority Business Development Agency and others. Finally, we commit to a robust, regular oversight and reporting. The diversity coordinator will oversee these efforts. We will take a proactive approach to working with contractors to ensure that the goals are met. And finally, the compliance officer will work closely with the diversity coordinator in reporting on a weekly and monthly basis. That is the presentation as we have it. We are, of course, now open to answer any questions you may have or any follow-ups that you would like us to address individually. Again, thank you for the opportunity and the honor to present to you today.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
A couple of comments and a couple of questions. First of all, I was impressed with this plan. I was impressed with this plan by, again, what I'd call the meat that was behind it. Identifying groups you've had an opportunity to work with. Look forward to continuing that relationship as you go forward. I thought that was helpful. I do like the fact you kept the plan limited both just to this design and construction phase, knowing that we have a longer window out in which we can, come back and work with you on an operational diversity plan. As Jill pointed out, I would like to see just some measurement of a goal towards veteran business inclusion in the design phase. One of the things that I was impressed with in your RFA2 application was the close work that Wynn has done with some of the armed forces bases in and around Las Vegas, and how you've actively worked with both enlisted servicemen and retired servicemen and women. We continue to push out the message that if you're a veteran in Massachusetts and you're a veteran who owns your own business that might have an opportunity to benefit from doing work with you, that we want you to step forward. We want you to raise your hand, be proud of the fact you're a veteran-owned business, and that there might be some opportunities available to you. I was also impressed in your plan through what I'd say were some of those things that kind of go above and beyond maybe what was required or what folks might have accepted as required. And that's the one, holding up in any of the best practices you undertake and sharing that out with the broader business community in Massachusetts. I thought that was impressive and important. And I also, even though it was referred to in the slide on your implementation page, on page 4, supporting the development of MBEs, WBEs, and VBEs, which is, again, kind of taking it a step further to do more hand-holding with those segments of the business community and the workforce to kind of, again, keep moving that forward and make this an opportunity to grow some of those businesses and enlarge that construction workforce, which we've talked about on a number of occasions for projects down the line, and being a leader in that. So I greatly appreciate that. But again, one of the things that just jumped out at me again was, it'd be great if we could find, is you've set a floor, at least, something that you want to attain with respect to, again, VBE participation in that design phase of the construction period. But again, overall, I was very pleased. I know Jenny is reported from Jill, did a lot of spade work talking to a lot of the groups that you've engaged. We've had a chance to see her out making presentations to the Greater New England Minority Supplier Business Council. So it's happy that a lot of thought has gone into this. It's a great plan. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Why no veterans in the first phase?
One of the issues that we struggled with on the design phase is the fact that we have this incredible resource in Las Vegas under the Wind Design Development Team that does so much of the work. And in reality, that group themselves is a very diverse group of individuals. However, they're Wind employees. And so, in a sense, they don't fall under any of the calculations that would be required. However, you know, in seeing the operation out there, you'd see how diverse it was. So with that much work being done by the home office, we struggled a little bit in that area. We certainly note your comments, and we'd be happy to just go back and take a look at this and see if there's any opportunities that we can think of. The other half of that is, of course, as we've gone around the community and you meet with vendors, whether they're construction or not, part of the battle, and that's why you see this mentioned in our plan, is getting folks to step up and identify themselves so that they can be counted. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's some businesses that we found that were actually run by veterans who they said, you know what, we just assume be a great business partner and don't want any special acknowledgement or recognition. Some service members feel like that they just wanted, they feel like they did their service to their country, and now they want to go out and do their business, and they want to leave it at that. So part of this is getting some folks up to the table, and that's why we might really try to work on outreach to see if we can get folks to identify themselves so they can certainly get the just credit, acknowledgement, and opportunities that we'd like to offer them. But duly noted on the request, and we will take a look at that.
Okay, good, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, so the design phase enterprise participation that you have now, 7.9% minority and 10% women, how is that calculated? Is that calculated to include a lot of the folks that are currently involved in wind projects, or is this a new target for Massachusetts?
That is something that I think we've had some discussions with Jill about that, about how could we include the wind design development. I think that's still an open item. And so I'm not sure. I think that would require some further work with the staff. Certainly there will be outside contracts as well. So we're going to work as hard as we can to get those goals obtained. But I don't know if I don't think we've faced yet, Jill, the provision of trying to work with the in-house team and how that could be.
I don't think we've talked about the in-house team. This focus is externally.
External only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, similar to Commissioner Stebbins' comments, I found this to be a pragmatic, concise, but substantive plan. I commend you for it. Your record in Las Vegas in your workforce is remarkable. If you came close to that when we got to the operations phase here in Massachusetts, I would argue, you know, we've done really well. The demographics may be a little bit different, but you know, in some ways, there's a lot of opportunities we believe here to reflect just what we have here, which is a very diverse population altogether. Some of the comments that we received, you may have seen, you know, that maybe even the other applicant the other licensee should look at your plan, because I think you address a lot of the points that we want to see. But of course, the proof will be in the pudding, and as we actually look at these numbers over the course and at each given point, and encourage you to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Yeah. Same comments, solid plan, and also firsthand knowledge of on-site visit to Las Vegas, and I do believe that you have the commitment and we look forward to you meeting your goals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back to Director Griffin.
So I would like to recommend that WIN take an additional look at the design phase for veterans. Chapter 23K, Section 15, does indicate that the licensee needs to set a goal. It doesn't specify what that goal should be. But you know, that may be something that they can take a look at and come back to you. So the question is, are you comfortable voting on the plan with a condition, or would you like,
Well, this, what would you recommend?
I would recommend that you approve the plan with a condition that when reconsider and come back to the commission with a diversity goal for the design phase in terms of veterans.
I too, as did the other commissioners, looked at both the plan and the comments from a group of very hard markers, and was impressed by both the plan and the response from the community that you've assembled. So I think that's a good suggestion.
I agree. And some of it just may need further clarification as to what consists of this design phase and the role that, you know, the team out in Vegas has and how those goals can match up for, you know, local business inclusion in it as well. I think it's a simple conversation to have.
One of the comments I did want to highlight, one of the comments from the group Action for Regional Equity. They requested that when set higher goals that are based on the regional diversity of Greater Boston. And I just wanted to comment that the goals that when set are based on a disparity study set by DCAM for design and construction. So I don't think that we can require any higher goals, although I liked what they said about this is the floor and not the ceiling. So.
Well, we've seen with others that the goals were set and then exceeded as they went to work and really went to work to ensure that those were floors, and the results have been terrific. So, given the track record here, we anticipate that kind of effort, and I'm sure we'll get it. But I hear what you're saying.
Great.
All right, with that then, perhaps Commissioner Stebbins, you'd be prepared to make a motion?
Sure. I move that the Gaming Commission, let me find the proper title for it. I move that the Gaming Commission accept the Win Mass LLC diversity strategy for design and construction as presented with subsequent details to be discussed and negotiated with respect to the design phase and MBE, WB, and VBE participation. And as an additional part of that motion, to have you come back and kind of clarify the comments and any updates on that category and that question at a future meeting.
Well, I'd be glad to bring both plans forward. You'll remember that that you approved MGM's plan with conditions. So I'd be glad to bring both plans forward.
Okay.
But the condition here, Commissioner, is I think it'd be helpful for them to be
It's
specific.
further clarification of the components of the design phase and minority women and business participation as they've had it outlined, as well as including a goal for veteran business participation as well.
Okay. Can you clarify what the MBE and WBE clarification that you're looking for? Just
Well,
for the record.
I mean, they've set goals, and I think they're aggressive goals, and we'd like to see that part. We also understand that, you know, there's, you know, a very accomplished team involved in the design phase of wind properties already based out in Vegas, and they're going to have a role in this project as well going forward, and clarifying what those roles are, and then again, what the vendor opportunities are for these three categories in the design phase going forward.
Okay.
Let me see if I'm trying to put some sharp edges, a little bit sharper edges on that so that they know what we're expecting them to do and we know whether they've done it. We certainly want another look at and a report about the opportunities for veterans in the design phase.
Right.
We certainly want to know about the way in which the interior design team at WIN can be accommodated within the goals that apply to veterans as well as overall, I suppose. Is that right? Or is that not right?
So typically with these plans, we're looking for external vendors. So, but if you would like something different, we'd need to just clarify that.
Well, I understood in the discussion that you were having back and forth that you were going to explore whether and to what extent the interior design folks could be incorporated in reaching any of these goals. If I misunderstood that, then I misunderstood it.
Okay.
Or do we just leave that? Is it your recommendation we just leave that alone?
Well,
And work on it, but not make it a goal or a requirement.
right.
Okay.
I think it's worth a discussion.
Okay, a discussion, but not a goal or a requirement. All right, so we put that to one side. We look at approving this plan with the condition that they take a look at the ability to reach some goal for veteran participation in the design phase. And by definition, we're now talking about exterior veteran business participation. And that would give us an approval with a condition. Is that what you'd recommend?
That's what I'd recommend.
Okay. Would that make
That-
sense to you?
Gets right to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
Yep.
So the motion as refined is that we approve the plan as presented by WIN with the condition that they re-examine the role of and goals for veteran business participation in the design phase.
Very
Okay.
good.
All right. Is there a second to the motion as
So,
recast?
so I second that amended motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. We do.
Okay, next on the list is item 6, which is the Legal Division, General Counsel Blue. And Deputy General Counsel Grossman, good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, it is afternoon. Well,
Good afternoon.
we're on the cusp,
Just barely.
right.
Commissioners, I have today for you the first draft of the ABCC regulations, which Deputy General Counsel Grossman will speak to. And we also have the first draft for your review of the protection of minors regulations. We have IEB Deputy Director Lilios to speak to you on those as well. So I think we can start with the ABCC regs, and I give you Mr. Grossman.
Okay, now this, if I understand it correctly, is the beginning of the informal comment process. We're not putting these out for the formal review process that will follow at some point. Is that right?
That's what we will ask you to do. That's
Okay,
right.
all right. So if we could hit the highlights of these, that would be very helpful, and we look forward to that.
Sure. By way of background, you'll recall back at the beginning of our regulation promulgation process, you discussed a number of policy questions. One of them was how to approach the regulation of alcoholic beverages within the gaming establishment. And the commission back then determined preliminarily that the approach would be to at least ensure, to the extent possible, that the service and consumption of alcoholic beverages was treated the same inside the casinos as it was outside the casinos. And that we would look to Chapter 138, which is the state alcoholic beverage control laws, for direction. In Massachusetts, under the gaming law, Chapter 23K, Section 26 requires that a gaming beverage license be issued at the commission's discretion to each casino licensee. So what we have done here, we've begun consultation with the ABCC on these regulations, and perhaps Mr. Day can speak to our discussions, or I can get into some of that as well. They have seen these on a preliminary basis. So what we set out to do was to incorporate what's required by Section 26 and some of the principles that are set out in Chapter 138 and the ABCC regulations. And what these regulations do is they establish one casino beverage license per property. They would require that the licensee submit as part of their application the location of each licensed area in which they would like to serve alcoholic beverages. There's a number of other pieces of information that would go along with the submission outlining each licensed area. And that ultimately each licensed area would be overseen by a manager or other principal representative who would be subject to the commission's licensing regulations and is ultimately responsible to ensure that all the alcoholic beverage control regulations are properly enforced. We also set up provision for the idea that a third party may come in and be asked or under agreement to oversee a particular licensed area, a restaurant or otherwise. And we have termed that process to be the jointly responsible person process, whereby the gaming licensee would identify under their beverage license a jointly responsible person who would oversee the service of alcoholic beverages within that particular licensed area. But ultimately, the gaming licensee would be responsible for the service of alcohol within the gaming establishment. So that's the administrative side of things in a nutshell. As far as the particulars are concerned, we incorporated what we believe to be the applicable provisions of Chapter 138 and 204 CMR that specifically relate to the distribution and service of alcoholic beverages into these regulations. And those are the provisions that we will need to discuss further with the ABCC. And those provisions ensure that the rules are the same inside the casino as they are outside the casino. They include basics such as the fact that you can only serve 2 alcoholic beverages to any one person at a time, but they also get into the forms of identification that would be acceptable in a casino. And this is an area that we're going to need to look at very carefully and discuss further with the ABCC, because it's an area where the state alcoholic beverage control law differs a little bit in our estimation from the gaming law. And we have incorporated what we believe to be the requirements of the gaming law within here. So ultimately, I mean, that's a broad overview of what we have here. I'm certainly happy to get into any specifics or particulars if there are any questions about that.
No, it's very helpful, and we need to take a look carefully again at these regulations. Where are we with respect to interaction with the ABCC on this, either of you?
Commissioner McHugh, I could probably update. Actually, there is a first set of comments we had from ABCC that Todd has incorporated many of those already in this draft. And then we are anticipating as we move forward with this draft, we are going to again communicate with ABCC and matter of fact have that set up to make sure we have their comments as we move forward with the final draft for the formal process.
Yeah, I think it's important, just speaking as one commissioner, but I think it's important that we be in a close synchronization with the ABCC here. I'm not telling you anything you're not working toward, but I would hope that by the time we get ready for the formal promulgation process, we would be as close to lockstep as we could get. We have some different requirements. This license, one licensee with, in effect, jointly responsible licensee, jointly responsible people is different from what exists elsewhere, I gather. But apart from those kinds of differences, I would hope we could be very closely aligned with them.
That's our goal.
Yeah, great. I suspected it was.
Just on that topic, just recently I've reached out to former colleagues at Treasury who oversee the ABCC and have kept appraised Director Day of this effort. And just on that note, they've renewed their attention to these matters. They've provided feedback in the past, but given their transition period, they've now renewed their attention to this matter, and we'll hopefully get that done very quickly.
Good. You need to move forward.
I echo that, and they need to be at a party to the conversation with us as well. I had 3 kind of quick comments or just notes reading through this. The special event beverage permit. I know our Slots Parlor licensee had talked about having craft beer festivals or some types of events like that. Is that the process you would expect to use to allow them to host such events?
Not necessarily. It's certainly possible. The reality is the slot parlor and all the gaming establishments can identify any areas within the gaming establishment as a licensed area, whether it's a function hall or any other kind of public space, whether they plan on using it on a regular basis or not. So it's possible that for that type of event, it could be held in an area that's perhaps not frequently used, but is part of the original license. So they have a plan in place as far as who's responsible for oversight, what types of beverages will be served, and the like. So they wouldn't necessarily have to come back and get the special event license. We built that provision in as a catch-all to ensure that we can accommodate any requests like that are reasonable and well thought out.
On page 7 on letter E, everything in that category is about prohibited distribution, and E just doesn't start off with a may not. It just jumps right into they can increase the volume of alcoholic beverages. So just a point to go back and look at, but and then just jumping down to page number 9, cleanliness. Aren't there regulations cited under somebody else's authority that requires a clean glass? Do we need to incorporate that as well?
I think that's a judgment call that ultimately will fall to the commission that we will have to talk about. There are certain provisions that are in the ABCC regs that we did not incorporate here that go in that area, like having a bathroom available and things along those lines that we didn't incorporate because I think we felt they fell a little too far outside. But at the same time, we tried not to make any judgments relative to the wisdom of the ABCC regs or statutes or what have you, and just said, this is what the law is, and this is what it's going to be in the casino, at least at this juncture.
We need to keep in mind the fact that if it's our regulation, we've got to enforce it. And whether we have the expertise to enforce some of these things.
Well, we will. It's important to bear in mind the statute gives enforcement authority to the Gaming Enforcement Division from the ABCC, who have that expertise, along with our folks as well.
Right. Right, that's a good point.
And that's the other part of the
Right.
conversations
Right.
with the ABCC.
We need to have,
We
right.
have an MOU in the works.
Right. Okay. Other thoughts? Okay, so at the moment, all we need to do is put these out for the informal public comment and get that process started and continue to work with the ABCC and move toward the formal promulgation process. Another set of well-crafted regulations. Thank you. Ms. Lilios.
The next set of draft regulations is numbered 205 CMR 150, and these deal with the protection of minors and persons under the age of 21. And similarly, this is the first time that you are seeing these provisions. They stem from sections 5, 21, and 25 of Chapter 23K. And you will notice that some of them are drafted in a way that requires the gaming licensee to create policies and procedures with respect to the substance. And as such, it may, in the end, make more sense to place certain of these provisions in the internal controls. But we wanted to get the substance of these out to you now and to the public for informal comment. The first provision, as drafted, requires the gaming licensee to have policies and procedures to prevent persons under 21 from gambling and to prohibit them from entering a gaming area, with the exception of licensed employees who are acting in the performance of their duties, which is a statutory exception. The second provision, 150.02 subsection 1, is actually a license condition under the statute and provides that the gaming licensee requires its security personnel to regularly check parking areas for minors and motor vehicles. The following subsection 2 requires the gaming licensee to have policies and procedures to ensure the safety of minors on the premises, including for the monitoring of unattended minors, for unattended minors. 150.03 stems from Section 25H of the statute, and it addresses advertising and marketing concerns with respect to minors and those under 21. And it sets out the requirements in the word of the statute incorporated in the reg for the operation and conduct of gaming, that no gaming licensee or gaming establishment authorize or conduct marketing and promotional activities relative to gaming to target persons under 21. And there follow 9 draft provisions that specify the types of advertising and promotion relative to gaming to be avoided. And finally, the last provision addresses reporting requirements relative to the above minor provisions, and the gaming licensee would be expected to report monthly to the IEB on the designated topics, which now number 6.
All right, again, very helpful, comprehensive comments, questions?
The one thing that, I'll be interested in seeing what plans our licensees come back with monitoring, primarily parking areas or other areas for children. But looking into the advertising and marketing guidelines, the one that would seem to cause some confusion would be number 2. There are lots of entertainers that our licensees may engage for promotion who have an appeal to somebody who's under 21. That one just kind of jumped out at me as requiring maybe some additional consideration or discussion.
And I expect that that would be the area where we may get a number of comments that will be helpful as we think through our regulatory actions moving forward as well, but
Okay.
noted.
one of those things hard to define, but you kind of know it when you see it. The hook here, as I see it, is designed to appeal specifically to minors, not in conjunction with others. But I think that's an important notion.
All right. We'll get some comments on that when we go out, and some undoubtedly some good ideas. Any other thoughts or comments? All right. Well, thank you both very much for another set of comprehensive regulations. We'll put these out for comment. And do we usually, I've forgotten, do we usually set a time limit or here, or do we just do that informally?
Usually we put it out for comment to almost 2 weeks, till roughly the next meeting. So we could, if the commission would like, we could say we put them out for comment for 10 days, and that will give us time to look at them. And if they're ready to come back at the next meeting or the meeting after, we can go through the comments. So.
Well, why don't we do that and plan to bring them on at the next meeting, and recognizing that the next step in the next meeting will be to put them out for the formal comment period, so that this is not the last shot that everybody will have, but it typically produces some very helpful thoughts before we put them out for that process. So put them out for comment for 10 days and take them up hopefully at the next meeting. That may change depending on what else is on the agenda, but that'd be the target. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now, the next item is investigations and enforcement, 7. And we'll start with 7A, and then we'll figure out where we go from there.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon, Director Wells.
So on 7A, the first thing we have for the Commission this morning, and I'm joined by our CFO, Derek Lennon, our Deputy General Counsel with us, and the Chief of the Gaming Agents Division. And we have before you this morning 2 of the sets of regulations I believe are going out for formal comment. Is that correct, Tad? Mr. Grossman, if they approve? With a vote. So the first matter is the gross gaming revenue tax remittance and reporting, 205 CMR 140, which you have in your packet for your consideration. And we did go through another revision process, internal discussion, and address some comments. And then also we have the continuing disclosure and reporting obligations of gaming licensees and qualifiers, 204 CMR 139. Similarly, that we did engage in the same process with that, as well as the Financial Investigation Unit provided input on those, as this would be part of their workflow going forward. So those matters are before the Commission. I have the team available if you have any questions or any comments for the team.
So we have, these are regulations we considered in the informal context.
Correct.
And they've now had the benefit of the public comment informally, and so we're ready for the next step. Okay. Questions, comments about these?
I have a very minor one. I've been involved in a number of the updates, and I think they're the product of a great set of discussions and revisions. There's one recent update based on the decision that we had last week, as we referenced the central monitoring system. I would just ask that we include or alternative as alternatively selected by the Commission. I think it's important the way it's written here, but I wouldn't want to codify the central monitoring system only as what will be the final say in the calculation of the tax. I'm specifically referring to number 3 or wherever else.
I tried to address that, and you might be right. Where we put it may be better after that. Under remittance, however, in section under section 140.03, numbers 3 and 4, actually allows for estimated drops, as well as in the absence of a central monitoring system, that estimated drops will be used. But you're right, it may be better to put it up just for clarification purposes under there. And one of the reasons that we put the definition under number 3 for what the actual drop will be is so that during the reconciliation process, we're not relying just solely on the estimates from our central monitoring system, but there is a formula, there is something that backs up these numbers, and we tried to take a shot at that with the Excel spreadsheet that's attached to this to show how you would do a quick worksheet for both table games and slots to come up with the backup documentation. But that's a good point. I'll try and move that for clarification.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions? Have we sent the small business impact statement out for these, or do we have to before we start this?
We will have to as we start the formal process.
But that doesn't come until later in the process.
No, we can probably bring that back to you at your next meeting to take
Okay.
a look at.
All right,
Yeah, we can start the formal process today and then have the
and then
impact
have them,
statement later on.
right,
Right.
okay, good. All right, then, if there are no further comments, I would accept a motion to start the process. Commissioner Zuniga, do you have
Sure,
such a motion?
I'd be happy to move that this commission approve and start the formal promulgation process for regulations 205 CMR 140 for the gross gaming revenue tax remittance and reporting, as well as 205 CMR 139 for the continuing disclosure and reporting of obligations of gaming licensees.
All right, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank
That
you.
process now will start.
Shall I continue to section B?
Now, what we're left, we have a decision point here. What we're left with is Region C, item 7B. And I know we have a number of people who would like to speak. What is the commission's pleasure about proceeding forward or taking a break at this point?
My own preference would be to, let's just move right through it. We've
How-
kept some people here about 3
Yeah.
hours. but-
Director Wells, do we have an idea of how long you think this may take?
As far as my briefing for the commission, I can do that in a matter of 10 minutes, just to give you an overview.
But the presentations?
The presentations, I have members from Mass Gaming Entertainment, KG Urban, Somerset, Sun, Moon, and Crossroads. If you give them 5 to 10 minutes each to speak, that can be...
An hour?
Correct, so...
We could take a 30-minute real quick since there's food right here.
The food court is open, isn't
The
it,
food court's
today?
open. That's right. It's
I'd be
unusual.
inclined to take that
All
30
right.
minutes.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we, I would really like to, particularly given the weather conditions outside and the fact that some people have traveled distances and everybody's got to get home, I'd like to hold this to 30 minutes, and we'll take a 30-minute recess and then come back at 1:15, because it's easier to remember quarter hours than it is minutes. And so we'll take a break now. We'll resume at 1:15. The food court is open, and we'll be back then.
Thank you.
All right, we are ready to resume with the 144th public meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. What is left on our agenda is item 7B, Regency update and requests for extensions. And Director Wills, I'm going to ask you to lead this off, if you would, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
As the Commission is aware, the Commission set a January 30th deadline for submission of the RFA1 materials for Region C. So I'd just like to give the Commission an update of the universe of what the situation is for the Region C applicants. We also have a request for extension, and I believe the applicants want to be heard on that issue. The 4 issues which I'm going to address for each of the applicants are A, whether or not they participated in the Region C scoping process, B, whether they submitted the $400,000 application fee, C, whether they filed a substantially complete application, and D, whether they filed a request for extension. Massachusetts Gaming and Entertainment, as you may recall from the slots parlor process, they were found suitable by the commission already. They did participate in the Region C scoping process. They also had previously submitted the $400,000 fee for the application originally when they'd been part of the process earlier. We did submit a scoping letter to them. They had provided the materials and the organizational chart to us of what their project is going to look like, who their partners are, what the equity is, and who the operator is. And then we received materials sufficient to determine that they had filed a substantially complete application. And they did not file a request for extension, obviously because they had complied with what the commission had set forth as the process. So Attorney Donnelly is here today. We also have KG Urban. They also participated in the scoping process. They had actually done that back in August of 2013, and the status of their organization had not changed to this date. However, as you can see from the letter that I sent to KG Urban, based on the information they had provided to us, they had not identified an operator and they expected another equity partner. So the IEB could not complete a scope of licensing process, could not determine who all the qualifiers were. And they, while they submitted the $400,000 application fee, they did not file a substantially complete application. They have filed a written request for an extension, and I believe Attorney Conroy is going to be available to be heard on that request before the commission. They had some updated information, some of which has been provided to the commission. The next applicant, potential applicant that I'd like to speak about is Somerset on the Move, LLC. And Mr. Hanlon is here, Dave Hanlon's here to address the commission on that matter. We had spoken at length. He had, with his team, participated in the scoping process, but like KG Urban, had not put the entire deal together, been very forthright about the status of what they have planned, but because they hadn't identified all the qualifiers, the IEB was unable to submit to them a scoping letter identifying all the entities and individuals that would need to submit the forms in order to submit a complete application to the commission. They did not at this point file a $400,000 application fee, and they have filed a request for an extension. Also have Ms. Wheaton from Sun Moon Casino application. She did participate in the scoping process, and similar to Somerset, has not filed the $400,000 application fee, and based on the materials that were submitted, had not identified an operator, had not identified the equity interest, and not identified a number of the parties the IEB would require in order to determine a complete application. Had filed merely an application on a BED for a trust and one EHDF for herself. So I did indicate to her in writing that would need more information in order to file a substantially complete application. We don't have that at this point, and I believe she has an oral request for an extension in part because she had not submitted the $400,000 fee at this time. And the other entity before the commission, I do have Bob Allen, who had represented Crossroads earlier when they had been part of the Region A process. I'm going to ask him to address the commission on the issue. We did receive from David Noon's widow a request for an extension. However, I'm learning that that interest may have actually been sold, and I'm not sure what the status is with that. So I don't know if there's anyone here for Mrs. Noon's. Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone here today, so I'll let Mr. Attorney Allen address the commission on that. Crossroads did not, while Crossroads had participated in scoping for the Region A process, Crossroads had not participated in the Region C scoping process, meeting the January 9th and January 16th deadlines, while they had submitted the $400,000 fee previously for Region A, And at this point, based on their suitability report, which we had previously done where the IEB had indicated that we couldn't complete it because it was not a complete application, and they're still in that same position. So we don't know what the deal is, and they haven't provided the information to the IEB. And I believe they would like to be heard on that as well. So that is the universe of where we are with the commission, and the commission's aware of the other deadlines that we set, the 9th, the 16th, and the 30th, and the status of those. I think it would make sense if the commission is amenable to begin by hearing from Attorney Donnelly from Mass Gaming and Entertainment to hear where they are in their process and their position on the request for extension, and then we can go through the other people that are here today.
Well, let me ask you,
Yeah.
that's an excellent suggestion, and that's what we'll do. Tell me, though, about a Sun Moon. I know we'll get to them in a second. Was a personal history disclosure form filed?
Yes.
The letter that's in the packet says the $400,000, it says payment of the application fee of $400,000 is hereby made, but
That is not
didn't
true. That is
happen.
not correct.
Okay. Okay, got it. Let's turn, and what I'd like to do is here, we have all who would like to be heard are going to be heard, but I'd like to keep the presentations for each entity, however many speakers there are going to be, to 10 minutes apiece. We have the documents, we understand the primary issues, and we welcome comments, but I'd like to keep them to that length of time. Good morning.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Members of the Commission, John Donnelly is my name, D-O-N-N-E-L-L-Y. I've been before you before, but it's been some time. We were, Massachusetts Gaming and Entertainment, who I represent, was found suitable in July 2013. Seems like not too long ago, but it's been quite a while for this process. I'm glad to be back here. We're back with a different project. I'm here with George Carney, who is the partner of one of the partners with Mass Gaming and Entertainment. Mass Gaming and Entertainment is a conglomerate of a group associated with Neil Bloom, who is a developer and real estate developer and a casino operator from Chicago area, who operates now, has developed and operated casinos in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, and in right outside of Chicago in Des Plaines, and operates one in Canada. The other partner is George Carney, who is with me standing here and is a lifelong resident of Brockton and a prominent citizen of the Commonwealth, and I think persons on the board are probably familiar with him by both reputation and maybe by even know of his many accomplishments. The third partner is a company called Clairvest, which is an entity that is a Canadian entity that is a partner of Mr. Bloom's outfit in the Chicago casino, and oftentimes provides additional equity in some of Mr. Bloom's projects. They too were in this process back in 2013 and looked at some sites and ultimately determined not to go forward. But they are licensed in other jurisdictions, namely in Des Plaines, and are a well-known equity group out of Canada. We're here to oppose the extensions. Now, I learned long ago as a young lawyer when I would get requests for extensions, I never knew what to do, and I'd weigh them back and forth, and I made a decision about 5 years in that I'm never going to oppose an extension just to oppose it. I'm only going to oppose it if there's a reason for my client to oppose it. Other than that, I need extensions, they need extensions, stuff happens, and you will have people come before you as your tenure goes on, needing, wanting, and having extensions. I'm not opposed to those. And I certainly don't want to say anything negative about any of the persons who are asking for the extension. This is very hard putting one of these projects together. My client, my principal client, Neil Bloom, was the first developer of a casino after the financial crisis. And we went through enormous difficulties in Philadelphia and in getting the casino developed, because what happened in Philadelphia was there were two applicants in a kind of a beauty contest. One was Foxwoods, one was our group. The applicants won. There were appeals to the Supreme Court, which permitted. And during that period of time, the economy collapsed. And with that delay of a year while waiting for the court, both projects fell apart. Foxwoods never got back up on its feet again, and because of that, there's only one casino. Neil Bloom and his group out of Chicago, because of his financial strength, was able to finance a casino and get it operating. It was the first stick-built casino after the Great Recession. He then went into Pittsburgh, and he went in there for similar reasons. The developer there, a man by the name of Don Barden, who other people in this room know, has now passed away, had tried to develop the casino in Pittsburgh. He too got tumbled by the recession, and Mr. Bloom took that building out, or that project out of bankruptcy and rebuilt it. Now, I say that not to beat the drum for Neil Bloom, but to say that the reason we object to this is that I think one of the commissioners said before, there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved and a very complex process to get to a casino. You have to have people, and we're very happy that we've got people. We've got people that have integrity and been licensed everywhere else. Mr. Carney and his group has been licensed and found suitable before. So we've got that. You have to have a site. And I'm going to ask Mr. Carney in a moment to address the site. He knows far more than I know about it. You've got to have an operator. And we have an operator that we've operated casinos successfully throughout the Northeast and without difficulty. And you have to have financing. And I don't think you could have a stronger financial group coming before you. The other groups that are asking for the extensions, and not to be critical of them at all, have not been able to put those pieces together. And I don't blame them, because they're very difficult to put together, and especially in today's economic situation, and today with what people see in the gaming industry as saturation and so on, it's becoming more and more difficult. I say all that to say we've got it. We're here. We're ready to go. We want to go, and we want to get operating as fast as we can. And any delay is fraught with danger and uncertainty, because we don't know what the future holds. We do know that today, as we sit here, we have those four elements, including what I think is a great site and a host community that is favorable to our position. And before I go on, and I will be brief, I'll be less than 10 minutes, but I'd like to ask Mr. Carney to just address the host community for a moment.
The members of the commission, to members of, I can talk loud enough. Anyway,
Yes,
the
sir, you
members
can.
of the commission, that I've been before you before. The only thing I'd like to say is this, that I feel that I came up with people that have got a good reputation, got plenty of money, and we got a great location in the city of Brockton. I've been a lifelong resident. I understand the city. I know that the jobs are at an all-time low, and as far as the thing is concerned, and the city needs help. It's a great city. I've lived there all my life. I have scheduled on this coming Friday to meet with the different city councils, so we comply with well, there's not too many at one time to go with the law that you can't have that, like three or four or whatever it is. I'm not up to date on that. But anyway, we have it scheduled for Friday and Saturday. We have the three state representatives, I believe, sending a letter into the commission supporting our application, as well as Senator Kennedy's office, I believe, sent in a letter also to you people. They said they'd have it in by Wednesday,
Yes,
so you'd
it's
have
been
it for you.
received. We've
So
got it.
anyway, the city is very much behind us. I feel very comfortable we'll get a good vote from the city council, more than we will need, and the city is 100%, and it's the last opportunity to help the city of Brockton. And that's, at my stage of life, I think this would be something, if I could put it together and have something that people would be proud of and something that the city needs and would employ a lot of people. That's about all I can say. If you have any questions to ask me, I'd be more than happy to answer them if I can. But I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't think I had something that we could produce and everybody would be happy and wouldn't be ashamed of giving us a license. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carney.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Donnelly.
George. Well, that's it. This isn't a complicated issue or one that requires any great argument, thank goodness. But the point is, stuff does happen, and we've got a bird in the hand, and we'd like to go forward with it. Of course, you know your statute and your duties and your responsibilities far better than I do, and I'm not here to suggest what you should or shouldn't do in your judgment. I just do say that the quicker that we can get operating, the more certain it becomes that this will happen if we're ultimately selected. And until it happens, we can't start doing what this whole thing is about, which is breaking it down to its simplest form, is about revenue and jobs. And until we can get into the process economically and understand it and hope that this license will actually be issued, because there's some uncertainty with regard to that too, I'm aware of. But as soon as we can get into this process and start the design, as you spoke with the wind people today, that's when we start hiring people, and that's when we start hiring construction firms, and that's when we start actually bringing those economic benefits. And those economic benefits really start to flow when we start putting the bricks and mortar down and then get operating and hire people. And those are the happy days when you see that kind of activity. We want to get there. I know you want to get there. And I leave it to your discretion, which you have on this, but I hope that there is not a delay. We're ready, willing, and able to get moving. And we thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Thank you, Mr. Carney.
Thank you.
I'd ask that Kevin Conroy from KG Urban,
Oh, wait a minute,
unless you
I'm
have a
sorry,
question.
I'm
Pardon me.
sorry.
Before we got there, just a question for Director Wells.
Yes.
There's at least two parties that have been prior
Correct.
investigated.
Right.
But a third one that has not.
Clairvest. So, we'll go through the submissions as to the complexity of what we need to do, but it's not as if this is already a done deal. We would need to update both the mass gaming and entertainment piece, the Mr. Carney piece, and then we would have to start on the Clairvest piece. So there would be that section of the deal, which is this was a newer addition in the last few weeks. So that Clairvest investigation would need to be done from the beginning.
But are they close to preparing those forms
Well,
and
they've
submitting them
submitted
to
the
you?
documents,
They have,
and we'll
okay.
review for completeness and all that, but they were very accommodating to our request that materials should be in by the deadline.
All right. Good afternoon.
Thank you,
Good
Commissioners.
afternoon.
My name is David Stern. I'm the CEO of DJS Global Advisors, and I'm advising KG Urban in connection with its development of a casino in New Bedford. And I'm here, obviously, in support of the application for a 60-day extension of the deadline. And thank you for the opportunity to present. KG Urban has been at this for 7 years. They've incurred costs well in excess of $10 million. They've considered other cities in the southeast, but they landed in New Bedford, where they considered the golf course, where they believed, and I think the facts demonstrated, it would have virtually no impact on the downtown area of New Bedford. In fact, it would detract from the businesses there. They considered something known as the Hicks Logan site, and that too was distant enough from the downtown area that it would add nothing and it would detract. The Cannon Street site is adjacent to downtown. It's been in private hands for over 105 years, and the right to acquire it had to be negotiated through a series of very complex transactions over a couple of years, and it is a contaminated site requiring an environmental cleanup that's going to cost $50 million that the city of New Bedford does not have. That sort of sets it. We We estimate that there'll be construction jobs in the neighborhood of 4,500, operational jobs beyond that of another 8,000, and a construction impact of $547 million and an operational yearly impact of something approaching $1 billion, and a cleanup of a environmentally badly damaged site. I guess what I would say is that, and the owner of that site will only part with it under the terms of a long negotiated cleanup plan that has been documented with more books than we could bring into this, and doesn't want to have any continuing liability. They want the company buying it to take on the liability, which we have agreed to. With respect to an operator, I can report that we're in discussions with 3, but I've been authorized to tell you that Foxwoods, which has already been qualified in Massachusetts, is in discussions with us about an operation management agreement, and we would hope that by the extension period, we would both have a final deal for operation management and the equity funding that we're now in discussions with many about. But this has been an interesting process as the referendum was on and as various other deadlines have been extended, et cetera. But we're now focused on a laser-like basis. I guess all I would add is that a letter that we attached, and I won't read you the whole thing, from the town, the city council sent us in August, and we annexed it. It says, an urban casino, as you have proposed, presents a unique opportunity to grow and promote our downtown businesses and will induce overall economic development and revitalization by creating thousands of jobs that generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Skipping along, we appreciate the strong and effective efforts KG's project design team has taken to develop plans that allows the proposed location at Cannon Street to coexist with and complement current maritime uses while opening the waterfront to public use as well. Because, as we've told you in other documents, we have an entire plan for blending this in both with the downtown and with the waterfront. And finally, we further recognize and understand that given the substantial cost to remediate and rehabilitate the N-Star and Sprague sites, a casino development represents the only true opportunity to transform those obsolete brownfield sites that are now off limits to the public, into a vibrant waterfront amenity open to and enjoyed by future customers and guests at the casino as well as the general public. We think this overall development is right in the sweet spot of what the Commission has been trying to do, and we urge you to grant us an additional 60 days to make it come to fruition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Do you have any response to or thoughts about the mayor's letter?
Well, what I didn't say is that we are in the process of joining with the mayor in a study being done by Sasaki Associates, which a design firm which the mayor has suggested.
Right.
And it is our hope, not a guarantee or not definite, that will be a catalyst for the series of discussions that are necessary leading to a host committee agreement, a host community agreement, excuse me. That's my response to that.
Is that study anticipated to be done within the time frame that you're requesting?
Yes, yes. Our architect has spoken with Sasaki's design team, and we expect it to be perhaps a 3 or 4 week at most study.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
I just want to make, this is Kevin Conroy from Foley Hoek. I just want to make one point clear. We're asking for an extension of the substantially complete requirement that the Commission set out for Region C. We have paid the $400,000. We've submitted our RFA1 applications for two individual qualifiers and 3 entity qualifiers. What we're short is the documents related to an operator and equity. And that's the extension we're looking for.
Mr. Stern mentioned briefly the equity piece, and this is usually all of the redacted information into these kinds of proceedings, but how would you characterize your progress relative to that equity participation?
I would say the equity participation has had people express interest in asking us who is our operator. And I can report that we're in discussions with 3 operators, but one in particular that has now been qualified, and we believe that agreement, if it's pushed, will lead to successful completion of equity raise.
And just to pick up on Mr. Attorney Conroy's remarks, would you, in your letter, you seem to allude that there would be additional time required to complete the investigations prior to the RFA2 deadline.
Well, so
that we currently have.
Excuse me. As I understand it, the reason the Commission introduced a substantially complete requirement for Region C is that it wanted to ensure that the investigations would be completed by the time that the RFA2 applications need to be submitted. So only those who have been found suitable could submit their applications. And so what we wanted to make clear is, yes, we need an additional 60 days to bring in an operator and bring in equity. We assume that if you do grant us that extra 60 days, that the RFA2 deadline may also need to move out 60 days in order to allow the IEB to do the investigations and complete that investigation before the RFA2 deadline. That's the reference.
Unless you required a waiver of our regulation that states suitability has to be done prior to the vote of the host community, correct?
That is correct, Commissioner. If that was a course of action, we could definitely consider.
Or I could put it another way: if we entertained we're entertaining it. If we granted the 60-day extension to the completion, to the substantial completion milestone, if you will, that would put us well into March, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. At which point you would have between 60 to 90 days to have a favorable vote of the host community, which puts us right up against the vote, the current deadline of RFA2.
Yes, although I would say we're moving very, very quickly to identify an operator and reach an agreement, and we're also trying to move as quickly as we can with the host community agreement. Obviously, we got to do the Sasaki study, and the mayor would like us to identify an operator, but we're trying to move very quickly on those things, and I hope we'll see how long that takes, but we're not going to wait 60 days if we can do it sooner.
And in deference to Attorney Donnelly, I think it's fair to say that it would be a nice problem to have some robust competition for the Commission to consider, having come to this point in the journey, and we would like very much to be one of those robust competitors for the license in the Southeast.
All right. Thank you very much. I would note, though, that our existing regulations always contemplated a substantially complete examination application before we made decisions about suitability. Section 115 of the regulations deals precisely with that, and that's what we're aiming for. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanlon, and I think that they're working with Mr. Allen, so maybe the two of them could come up to the podium next. That would be most efficient.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm David Hanlon. I'm with project that we submitted, Somerville on the Move. I have had over 30 years experience in the gaming business as a developer and operator, licensed and operating in multiple jurisdictions, New Jersey, Nevada, Illinois. And I'm new to this project because I was only recently asked invited by the town of Somerville to Somerset, excuse me, to get involved in this process. So as a result, I've gone as quickly as possible as we can on this, and I think we've accomplished a lot. I had the pleasure of filling out my personal history disclosure form, which I hadn't done for a while. Learned a few things I'd forgotten. So we did that. We put in the submission. We have a letter from a major investment banking firm about providing the debt. We're in discussions with a number of entities to provide the equity on the process, and we have full support of the city, or the town, excuse me, down there. And I met with them as recently as this morning on that. They believe that they have full support of all the people down there to go through that. They have an excellent site, a good location. And recognizing very late in this process, I do think that I have the ability and the experience and the ability to put together a project very quickly that could be a significantly positive competitor and alternative to other sites being proposed.
All right, Mr. Hanlon, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, nice to see you all again. My name's Robert Allen. I have a law practice in Brookline. It's been a while since I've been before the commission. I've been representing Crossroads in the past. You may remember we came here, we found us suitable, and we failed in the referendum in Milford. Through a tremendously, and hopefully you can remember, exhaustive effort we spent in Milford. We spent a lot of time and a lot of money in Milford trying to convince them that this was a proper location. However, we were not successful. We did identify when we were here last for our suitability hearing our equity partner. We, quite honestly, after the Milford experience, it was a little bit of hiatus there to collect our collective breaths and wait for another opportunity. I personally have been involved in a number of locations down in the southern part, down in Region C, and just very recently, Somerset, which this board I think knows is about to experience a tremendous loss with their largest taxpayer leaving in 2017, crippling effect on the community. They are desperately seeking somebody, and they basically came to us and talked to us, see if there was an interest. Mr. Hanlon is familiar with, Scott Butera, who was we sat here with before. He's no longer with Foxwoods, but continues to be on Crossroads as in an advisory capacity. I spoke with him today. He's familiar with Mr. Hanlon from his long experience, and we think this is a nice team to put together. We feel we've paid our $400,000, and we've been very involved in this process. We believe that the 60-day extension would be appropriate for us in order to basically what we'd be looking for is to look at our table of organization, finish our negotiations with Mr. Hanlon and his team. We do not anticipate a significant addition. Maybe 2 or 3 qualifiers. I've spoke with Ms. Wells a little bit about it, but it's a little bit early in the negotiations. We'd be very excited. We believe competition is important for Region C. We have a very, very good understanding of this process. We have a very good understanding what it takes to convince a community. Here we have a community that is very supportive of it, which is a little bit different than what we had last time. Here I think we've identified some partners. We've identified 2 operators. Our equity piece is still in place. We've already reached out and have some preliminary conversations about that, and we believe with a 60-day extension we can put the pieces together. I know Ms. Wells spoke of a letter you received from the widow of Mr. Nunes. I do want to represent to the commission that while I'm not the transactional attorney for Crossroads, I was provided with a complete release from Crossroads of Mr. Nunes that he had taken care of prior to his unfortunate passing. And I believe that that release was sent to Mr. Nunes' widow either on or after an email about the same date that the letter was. So my guess is that the affairs are being put in order, and there's a lot of questions as to what is in his estate. So we did provide her with a copy of the release that was negotiated and worked out and signed by all the parties.
All right, thank you for that. Who, assuming that is so, who is Crossroads?
Continues to be Robert Potamkin, Bruce Etkin, and Tim Prosciutti.
Okay, who were three of the qualifiers on the last go-round.
That's correct. I believe Mr. Prosciutti's interest was below the level. Yeah.
All right, but those are three names from
All
from
qualified.
the original. All right, okay. All right, I got it. I'm sorry, there's one other thing. You have paid the $400,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the situation with Crossroads, well, they
Oh, I'm
paid-
sorry, Crossroads, of course, has paid the $400,000.
The
That's right.
Crossroads has paid,
Right.
Somerset has not.
Right.
Somerset went through the Regency scoping process, Crossroads did not. And now they're coming together, so that's the unusual circumstances we have with this team.
Partnerships are formed in mysterious ways.
Right, go ahead.
Mr. Allen, you were talking briefly about the equity piece.
Yes.
And at the same time, Mr. Hanlon also referenced sort of certain preliminary discussions. Crossroads, at the time they were in Milford, had, and were found suitable, did not have a complete financing plan, given, that was acceptable at the time, preliminary to be done. And then the referendum came and it failed. So we never got to see, as I understand it, a big picture or a picture of the financing or the equity financing. What can you tell us as that may stand now?
Well, we, as a little background, and I think because the referendum happened shortly after it fell off the table, we did provide this commission and Ms. Wells with identifying our equity piece. I believe we might have walked in or provided it to her the day before we came here for our suitability hearing.
With GLPI?
That's correct.
Is that still?
That's correct.
Under negotiation or?
Yes,
in
we've.
spirit?
Yes, naturally he wants to understand the site and understand the building. It's a little bit different than the Region A piece, so it's not as significant. But yes, the conversations have already begun. And again, we've been involved in this in fairly shorter period of time, although we feel like we've been involved for a very long time with this process.
And the 60-day extension that you're requesting would then help me understand what that may be. The substantially complete piece, or?
Yes, there would be a change in our table of organization we anticipate. So that would be going to the substantial completion.
Well, I guess then my question would be, who is the applicant? If
Yeah.
you are
Yes.
partnering,
I
who
guess I
is
was
the
going to that,
applicant?
yeah.
Because if Crossroads is the applicant, they paid the fee, but yet they didn't meet the deadlines for going through the scoping process. So I'd leave it to the commission's judgment on what to do about that. But if Somerset is the applicant, does then not Somerset have to pay the application fee? So that's one of the questions for the commission's consideration.
Yeah, I think that's, we're all asking the same question, so. Go ahead.
And I think we would be fine if either way the commission decided to vote on that. But
Wait a minute, you're the applicant.
Yes.
So it's not us to put the deal together.
Well, Crossroads believes that we paid. We haven't done the scope agreement. We believe we could turn that around pretty quickly. We're talking daily with the folks in Somerset, so.
All right, I hear you.
So if Crossroads were the applicant, then you would be seeking an extension of the substantially complete requirement, correct?
Right, I think it would be twofold. If that's the case, they'd the substantially complete application, but they'd be in, for example, a different position than KG Urban. KG Urban met the the deadlines, they did produce materials on the 9th and did have a scoping meeting by the 16th. So they're for interests of equity or fairness, they're in a slightly different position. So I think Crossroads is also asking for an extension of an opportunity to do the scoping process as well.
I think that's right.
Although I think we need to redo it for KG Urban once they get their partners anyway, because we couldn't complete the scoping process, if that's helpful.
Okay.
So, and Mr. Hanlon, you would be, you or a team would be considered the operator?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
All right. Further questions? Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you all
very much.
And then we also have Ms. Wheaton from Sun Moon.
All right, good afternoon, Ms. Wheaton.
The CFAN Trust, doing business as Sun Moon Resort, is approaching this in a different manner. It is establishing itself as a casino and resort entity independent of an existing casino company here in Massachusetts. In which case, the CFAN Trust is the applicant, and I, as the trustee, have the ultimate decision-making. So I'm the primary person responsible with respect to any decisions in authority, not our funder, if you will, who is an institutional investor, which would probably warrant the qualifications exemption. But let us speak to the matter of the fee.
I'm not sure if, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I really didn't want to go into the entire scope at this time. I just want to firstly answer the questions. On or about January 23rd, to beat the snow that we had on the 24th, I went out of state, intending to return on the 27th, not only to finalize the written application, but to pay the fee. I was one of the many 10,000s of individuals who got caught out of state, exiled behind the snow curtain, if you will, and could not return. And there were a number of people who were bumped, who had priority for scheduled flights to return to the Northeast. I got a guaranteed flight Friday morning, January 23rd, and made it back here in time to file the application on time. I also faced 3 feet of snow that had not been taken care of, which I took care of on Saturday. Intending, of course, to then get out on Monday, we all were snowed in again. So this past Tuesday, in fact, is the first chance I've had to get out and process the fee. I have been informed as well, while I brought all of my materials with me with respect to the written application out of state, I had been informed that a branch of my bank was there, only to find out it was for the employees only. So I couldn't do anything with respect to the fee while out of state. So this past Tuesday, which would have effectively been the 3rd, is my first day of getting out to process that. So I'm happy to announce that the bankers are, as we speak, in the vaults counting in order to send you the fee, commissioners. And as fast as they do that, and if they don't take too long staring at the funds like they like to do before they part with them, then we're talking a matter of a couple of days for that. In Monday's weather, but I don't know what more I may have to do, so if I do with respect to the bank, it'll probably be getting over there by Tuesday. That's one on the matter of the funds. On the matter of the funding for the project, this being a $4 billion project, I am also happy to announce or to further inform you that the CFAN Trust already has its funding. The expectation, as reflected in the cover letter and information to you, of the minimum of $600 million actually has been changed where the funders want to provide more at this time. So we're only in an influx of a couple of days, going as fast as we can for them to submit that. And I will provide that information, as I've already promised, next week when that is done. As far as my point of view, agreements, conversations mean nothing. I want it in the trust account. And that's when you would be informed of exactly who it is and any of the other information that you require. And that's pretty much it with respect to the funding. With those funds, then CFAN is going to be in a position to hire as independent contractors the variety of individuals that are out there who are not now associated or under agreement with an existing casino operation, but have had decades of experience in the planning, operations, and management of such. And the trust is going to hire them as independent contractors. Pardon me for saying, they will work for us. They will do it our way, and there won't be a tug of war with respect to how the funds are spent on our project, which is 95% resort on 500 acres, more if I can. The existing plans which you've seen that have been illustrated in part and shall be furthered, that is 95% resort for us all to enjoy non-gaming. And the maximum and ideal plans and the amount of money that it's going to take to provide such a resort is one which I absolutely refuse to have any funder, investor, casino operator, if you will, try to minimize with respect to the quality and the funding that goes into it. So this is the way that we're doing it. And the casino experts, I call them, as well as the resort experts, will be hired and work for us as independent contractors. And this then becomes a project that we, the people of Massachusetts, will be putting together to do it our way for the United States to enjoy it in the manner that the people of Massachusetts see how we can provide it as a resort and a casino.
All right. Thank you very much.
Trying to go quickly.
Questions?
You seem to suggest that it was the snow that prevented you from transferring the funds to us?
I couldn't physically get back here. You have to be physically in
Yes,
the bank.
but you can do banking remotely.
I don't do banking remotely, sir.
Well, the bank does that all the time.
No, I only started Tuesday. You're going to get it in a couple of days, that's all. Physically, I was only able to be here to walk into the bank to start the process. I even attempted before I left to provide the pre-authorization before I left. In my bank, the bank doesn't allow that. You have to physically do it on the day in which it's going to be done. However, the bank is doing it now, so it's just a matter of a couple of days.
I think we get the point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Director Wells.
So that gives the universe of what we have for Region C and the status of the applicants or potential applicants, however the commission deems the status of their submissions before the commission. I think at this point the commission has the decision making on what to do about these requests for extension. We have had some discussion internally. I think from the investigators' standpoint. What I would like to avoid is working on an investigation and then ending up having the applicant not complete the deal, and we've wasted time and resources on that application. A suggestion I have for the commission, given that Mass Gaming and Entertainment has completed that, the IEB could start the process on that investigation. We still have to update the information from Mass Gaming and Kearney, and we have all of Clairvest to do, so there's a substantial amount of work on that piece. And then potentially, defer to the commission on scheduling, but if another applicant completes the application, at that point, the IEB could start that investigation so as not to waste time, but that would potentially impact that May 31st RFA 2 deadline. So we stand ready to do as the commission wishes, but I'm just concerned, given the amount of work we have with the opening of Penn National's casino at Plainridge, that we do need to focus on those investigations we're doing for the vendors and the employees. So I'll defer. We will do as the commission desires.
Yeah, to amplify on that, there's the work that needs to be done to get the Penn National floor ready when that time comes, but there's also the various licensing background investigations that have to be completed before that. So that's a given, and that's part of the environment in which everybody is working. But that's a point well taken, and we need to take that into account. Okay, so there we have it. We've got some requests for extensions. We've got one opposition to the requests. Let's talk. Who wants to say something, take a crack at where we are, where we should go?
Well, I think we need to start with the very basic, which is the $400,000 fee. I think when we started here today, we thought we had, from 5 potential applicants, we had fees for 3, and now we learn that 2 of those potential 5 have joined. So now we're down to 4. Is that accurate? We're looking at 4 potential applicants, and one of them has not submitted the fee, if we look at it that way, correct?
That's correct, but you would have to be comfortable that since Crossroads was
Yeah, I
joining
understand.
that scope process, you
Right.
just sort of have to waive that, which is the commission has the authority to do.
Right.
So my first thought is that that is the very basic piece to starting the process, is the application fee here, and I think that's probably our first decision moving forward here. Is before we entertain an extension of any kind, I don't think we can use any resources without fees in place.
Well, the regulations contemplate an extension if the fee is paid.
Correct.
And if an initial application is filed, the regulations deal with the minimal content of an application, and then provide for the IEB to ask for additional information. They contemplate that. So, but the payment of the fee is and filing some components of the application described in the application itself are the starting point. So, point well taken. So, what is your thoughts with respect to that, Commissioner?
Well,
I mean, we could either, I guess, let me be less opaque. We could either say that the deadline for the fee was the fee, or we could say there's a deadline, but there was snow, so tomorrow at 5 o'clock is the deadline. We'll extend it. Or we could do other things. But I mean, what are your thoughts as to what we should do with respect to that?
Well, I suppose since we are, if we are looking to allow one of the applicants to join forces with another after the deadline, then I would not be opposed, in the interest of fairness, to one more business day, to have that fee, and would be fine from my standpoint, just in the interest of everyone understanding where we're coming from, but that would be a hard deadline. I would just.
I'm disinclined to any extensions, but I will try to take them one at a time. the 400,000 application fee is nothing new, and
Correct.
did not come about just last Monday when we got all this snow, and it's not hampered by any weather. However the banking, however the preference for banking is, this is something that could have been easily done regardless of the weather. So I'm disinclined to extend that. And it's and by the way, I would remind ourselves, we've seen Ms. Whitten before on the
Seen
region.
what?
We've seen Ms. Whitten before. She's had for an extension request to us before on the Region A, with a different set of circumstances,
Well,
but without the application fee as well.
We're dealing with Region C now, and I think we really need to focus on Region C. This is we're writing on a blank slate, and so we're writing on the record that we've created for Region C, So with all due respect, I'd like to keep us focused on that. I hear what you're saying.
Well, I am disinclined to extend the deadline for the submission of the 400,000. If you were, if the majority wants to extend that, I would be agreeing that it's a very short time frame. We've provided everybody our wiring instructions, and it's the minimum that is a statutory, not just regulatory requirement for us to move to do anything with it.
Right. Commissioner Stebbins, what do you think?
You know, the initial fee is also, I think I echo Commissioner Cameron in that, you know, it's a critical linchpin. As I recall, our RFA1 process for the slots in Region A and Region B, we had people arriving to us at the last minute, just under the 5 o'clock wire, to make sure that the $400,000 was paid up. Everybody with the understanding that that's not refundable. Regardless of, you know, some issues, well, you know, relative to, you know, having all the pieces of the partnership puzzle in place. So I'm also weighing the suggestion of trying to be flexible on $400,000 for an additional day, but knowing that's not really how we conducted ourselves in the first RFA1 application process.
But we've extended this deadline now twice before.
Yeah.
This is not, you know, just to keep on the 400,000, and I'll get to the other extensions later. This is not something new. This should not have kept anybody. This should not catch anybody by surprise. You know, I know there's a desire to generate competition, and there's an argument towards that, but this is not something new. I think the market is telling us something else. I recognize that these deals are very hard to put together, and there's a lot of moving pieces, and things do happen, like the passing of a principal in one of the applicants, you know, which could be result into other kinds of partnerships, etc. But at a minimum, the non-refundable statutory application fee is something that has been, you know, in place for this region, Region C, for a long time.
Well, my initial thought was we ought to be flexible on the fee, but I think you've persuaded me. That's been there for a long time. That's very easy to comply with. Our focus was on the deadline that we set. We've been at this for some considerable period of time, and we have to move forward. And so I hear you with respect to the fee, but we also required more than the fee. We required an application by the 30th. Now, the regulations talk about what an application, in section 104 of the regs, I think, talk about what an application is, and it's a business entity disclosure form, a personal history disclosure form, and the Massachusetts supplement. It doesn't say how many of those have to be done, but it does say that that has to be in a completed application. And we've gotten that from, we've gotten that from several, and that plus the fee is a minimum to go forward, and that's what we wanted by the deadline. So I'm inclined to say that the fee by the deadline was the fee by the deadline, and that the application by the deadline was the application by the deadline. Now, what happens thereafter is something we need to talk about for a minute, because our regulations contemplate that as well. I think provide a mechanism for going forward that's both fair and equitable and consistent with the regulations and the deadline that we set. So let's though just talk one more minute and see if we can get the fee piece ironed out and then move to the next stage. I would be inclined to join Commissioner Zuniga in saying the fee deadline was the fee deadline, and that's it.
Well, I was not in any way suggesting that we should give an extension to that just for the sake of giving an extension. My thought was if we were allowing another applicant, and we haven't made that decision, to team up and use the fee from one, but yet the application from another, that was my only rationale for thinking one more day, because we would be in one sense for another applicant if we agree that that was appropriate. So it wasn't about just extending that deadline. It was about a fairness issue.
I see those two things separate. I think the forming of partnerships in other regions, and I'm sorry that I'm bringing up other examples, but it's we've done this in the past. There were partnerships that were formed after deadlines, where somebody became, failed in a referendum, formed a partnership with another applicant, and that was all fine because at least one, in some cases two, had already filed the $400,000 non-refundable fee and had been found suitable in some form or another. So the forming of a partnership, albeit like yesterday or however recent, is all within the confines of the solicitation that we've made, which includes the basic personal forms, disclosure forms, and the non-reimbursable application fee, which is why who is the applicant is an important question, but that is not a deal breaker in my mind when it comes to the other four applicants, or the other four that are now three, potentially.
Okay. Anything further, Commissioner Stebbins, that you'd like to offer on this particular part of it? No. Let me step back before we take the next step and look at the big picture, because we set that deadline of January 30th after multiple extensions of previous deadlines, out of a recognition that goes all the way back to where we started. And that is that we needed to deal with Region C last for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the pendency of the tribal gaming petition and trying to figure out when the feds were going to let us know one way or the other about that. But at the same time, not letting Region C get too far behind in the process because of the economic development and interest that we have in the economic development and that the legislature had in the economic development of all regions of the Commonwealth. And that's why we set the initial deadline. We didn't get any response from the feds about where the petition was going, where the tribal thing was going, so we extended it, hoping we'd get some information. We extended it twice, and then we finally said we have to move forward and begin to contemplate what we're going to do in Region C, because it is beginning to fall behind, and that's how we got to the January 30th deadline. And it seems to me that is an important goal to keep in mind here as we move forward. We got a plan. We don't know what the feds are going to do, but we've got to begin the planning so that we move forward and figure out where we are when we get to the end. With that is the desirability of competition, and with that is the desirability of getting and attracting facilities that will meet the somewhat reduced $500 million capital requirements that we've instituted for Region C. So it seems to me that's the big picture and the context within which we are operating here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Director Wells, but or General Counsel Blue, but the regulations contemplate that after the application, the RFA-1 application is filed, that there is a review of what's been filed for completeness. We've defined what completeness is, and then a notification by the director of the IEB as to what pieces are missing, if pieces are missing, and what's necessary so that the IEB can complete its RFA-1 investigation. And do I read that correctly?
And under,
Putting
under,
104 and
I'll also
115
defer-
together?
Yeah, under 111.
111. I'm sorry, 111 and 115.
Completeness, yes,
Right.
that's correct.
Right.
I think for clarification would help me, in 111.6, it says the commission may in its discretion extend the time for filing of a complete application to enable the applicant to cure a deficiency in its application. That's what you're talking
Right.
about. So for purposes of the IEB and sort of going forward, I would suggest, I would read that as the complete application where you have your equity, your operator, and all your qualifiers. So just for clarification, under subsection 6, is that the commission's reading as well?
Well, and then there's a subsection of 115 that talks about notifying the applicant of what parts are necessary in order for there to be a complete application. I think it's 115.02.
Yes, 115.021.
So we have that process. So I guess where I'm leading is that without doing, if I have that right, without doing violence to the deadlines that we've set, we could say that the deadline was the deadline. We've gotten materials from certain applicants that the director of the IEB has the power to request additional materials to complete the application from those who have filed and paid the fee, and that we would anticipate, or we could even set a deadline for when those materials were necessary to have and file, and keep this process moving forward under the framework that we've authorized with the RFA-2 deadline still in place. And in that fashion, move the process forward and keep it going consistent with our regulations. So I throw that out as, I'm sorry, we're now in deliberations. So I'd welcome comments about that.
I guess you're looking at this all in the aggregate, correct? Not each one of these requests separately?
Yes.
I'm
looking for a framework, basically, that allows us to move forward in an appropriate fashion, one that's consistent with the regulations.
So,
And everybody, you know, some people don't have to do very much of anything. Some people may have to do quite a deal, but the deadlines were in effect. The process is laid out. The process is there, and we apply the process and move forward.
so the process would be that we have 3 applicants who have paid the fee on time, with different levels, one possibly completely, substantially complete, or you know.
Completely substantially
I know,
complete,
that doesn't.
that's right. No, no,
Well,
that is.
well, obviously, you haven't had a chance to look at all of that application yet, but from the cursory review, it appears to be substantially complete.
I'd say they're in good shape.
Okay, and then we have two others who are missing pieces, and if I'm following you, Commissioner, we would advise that you are missing certain pieces, that would be the notification that would be needed, and then the decision would be to give an appropriate time to remediate, to get those missing pieces in, correct?
That's what I would envision, and I would further envision that we set the time now for those additional pieces to be in.
Are we going to come back to this notion of what constitutes substantially complete?
I think we,
Because we've had that discussion as well.
No, we already have.
yeah,
Not
we've made
just,
that
not just,
decision.
not just today.
No, that's right.
I thought we'd made that decision.
Right.
We had to have the three elements.
Yes.
And the requirement was to have that substantially complete prior to January 31st.
Yeah, but we've always had the situation in which you know, people have filed documents, and the IEB review has indicated that there are pieces missing or that we need more information. We went through that whole process with the other three pieces of this that we've done. And so there's always some more that you need.
Well, I guess I wonder if, since we introduced the notion of substantially complete, we come back to something that's difficult to achieve. If we left the substantially complete like we did originally on Region A, and let all the elements that are very easy to measure, the fee, the forms, a host community agreement eventually, 90 days or 60 days prior to you know, another deadline, etc. All of those pieces take care of themselves without this notion of substantially complete. I understand the position that Director Wells is put into, and it's not desirable. The prospect of having to review a lot of people all of a sudden in the middle of opening up and licensing vendors, which we now have to, I understand that. And that's what gave way, in my opinion, to this notion of having these substantially complete, because we don't want her to be chasing people around. But we could simply do away with the substantially complete and have her issue a report by whatever time she can issue with whomever has been identified or not, and make her do the recommendation as to suitability or not, given the parties that are involved or not. If she has said, I've communicated, I've asked, haven't received, therefore I do not have a recommendation of suitability because they have not identified a major piece of funding or their operator or whatever, then that's where we are.
That would differ from what we've done in the past, and I think it would also be a drain on our resources to move forward in that manner. I would be much more inclined to send a letter out. These are the pieces you're missing. You have until X date to get them in, and if they're not in, at that point, that applicant is no longer in the process. They have not completed the requirements, which in that manner, we would not be utilizing all of the resources for IEB on an applicant that may never be able to put their entire package together.
Well, I guess that's what we did. That's what we tried to do last time, right? You
Well,
sent a letter. You scheduled a scoping conference. They came or not with some, with whatever they had at the time. And then the deadline came, and now we have what we have.
But I think what we're trying to do here today is be consistent with what we've done in the other regions, which was time to cure some deficiencies, and just about all the applicants had something that needed to be cured. Very few were totally complete. I would agree that some of these are less complete this time, that's for sure. But again, I think it's important that we try to be consistent and let people clearly know what their deficiencies are toward a complete application and what would be the appropriate time to cure them.
Yeah, I think what we've learned from the last, and of course this is a continuing learning process, but I think what we learned from the last episodes and that we tried to cure in what we are doing here was the endless chase for the missing pieces. And without any hard deadline in place, we had no real way to announce a drop dead date. And I think that it's really important to do this here if we're planning to hold, as I hope we can hold, the RFA 2 deadline to get this process moving down the line. So if we said, for example, that Director Wells was authorized to let the applicants know of the pieces that were missing in a letter by such and such a time, that they were free to contact her immediately to tell her plans and see if they had everything lined up, and that the deadline for the missing pieces was, say, the middle of March, then we would have a structure that was both consistent with the regulations and would avoid, to the best we can avoid, the kinds of endless chase problems that we've had in the last two, and have some hope of being able to keep to the RFA 2 deadline that we've set up. Now, as Director Wells has said, we've got a number of other things on our plate, and everybody, the public, the Region C applicants, the Region C people, have to understand that we've got a set of priorities, and we've got to meet those priorities in the order in which they are priorities. But so we may have to do it, just depending on what we get in. But that way, it seems to me, is the best we can do to solve the kinds of problems that cropped up before, and still carry this process forward in a smart fashion.
Well, I would go along with what you described, Commissioner, so long as we kept the RFA 2 deadline current, as we have.
I would not like to change the RFA 2 deadline.
I sense that's going to be very difficult very quickly. I don't know, I cannot do all this math in my mind. I used to be able to, but if you take away 90 or 60 days from the end of May, and you start to put some of these activities not in parallel, but one after another, as it was described to us here, I first need a study in order to do a host community agreement. That'll, a catalyst first in order to, et cetera. We are right up against the deadline very quickly. So I don't want us to be in a position next time of talking at a future time, even before May, of extending yet another deadline, because although the efforts of either chasing or not receiving information have resulted in whatever the case may be, something tells me that there's going to be potentially more than one party coming to the same situation of saying we just need a little bit more time.
Well, but we have the power to say no, and the problem with saying what we've got today is what we've got today is that it's going to turn out that we don't, that everybody doesn't have something in. And the question is it a minor piece or is it a major piece? But everybody, I will warrant, doesn't have something in, or something's going to change in the financing, or something's going to change in the makeup of the company, or something's going to change somewhere, so that we simply have to anticipate that we can't drop a steel curtain down on the filing process. What we can do is set a deadline for things that exist as of that date for the supplementation based on conditions as they exist of the deadline date. And after that, if somebody, God forbid, should pass away, or there has to be some other change, that just goes with the course. But as of now, it seems to me we ought not contemplate moving the RFA 2 deadline, and we ought to try our very best to see if this will work to allow us to keep it.
Is it feasible to think, and looking for Director Wells' feedback on this, and instead of putting you in the position of setting timelines of when you want to have material for investigation, let's count on the RFA 2 process clock?
I think it would be helpful for me to go with Commissioner McHugh's recommendation of the commission setting a deadline even today on a number of days with those materials, that if the IEB sends a deficiency letter to the applicants, that the commission set today, so there's no question, the commission's made the decision, and that's the date by the materials have to be in. Because for planning of resources, that's the most helpful thing for me.
And you've already sent deficiency letters. Would you contemplate, if this proposal were adopted, would you contemplate sending additional deficiency letters that were more specific? Or?
Correct. So I gave sort of a general letter to
Right.
the applicants that we couldn't complete the scoping process.
Right.
What I would anticipate, we'll review the materials. I would meet and/or have telephone conferences with the other applicants that were not substantially complete.
Right.
And then based on that, I would send out an additional specific deficiency letter on what I would need from them in order to
Right.
complete the application. Now, it's a little tricky when they don't have their deal together, because
Right.
normally we do a scope of license
Right.
process, and I can identify the qualifiers that need to submit.
Right.
But I think that that's something, given the the level of experience that the folks we're dealing with have with the casino industry, they would understand what they need to do.
All right. And so that, would you, I don't want to pin you down on it,
Okay.
but would you anticipate that process, the process of looking things over and sending the more specific deficiency notice, could be completed next week?
Week to 2 weeks, 10 days.
Okay.
What about March 15, which is a date that Commissioner McHugh suggested for that hard deadline of curing all their deficiencies, however deficient
Right.
some of them
The
have
sooner
been?
it is, the easier it is for me to meet that May 1st deadline. You know, as you recall, when we did the suitability reviews for Regions A, B, and the slots parlor, those took from 6 to 9 months for the whole process, and we had 100 consultants working for us. We're not in that same situation. However, in this situation, some of this work's already been done, and we just need to update it. So we just, I can work with you, and I can let you know where we are. I think the big question for me, which would be helpful, and if you don't want to answer this question now, I'll defer, but the question for me is, do I start working on an application before they've cured the deficiencies? So for example, if I send something to KG Urban and say you have to have something, X, Y, and Z in by March 15th, do you want me to start on the investigation before March 15th, or do I start on March 15th once we know? So that would be helpful. I don't know if you can answer that question.
You of course manage your workload, but something tells me that you start working on it if you have if you build, if we build our applicants for those investigation costs.
Yeah, it's not a matter of cost, it's more the allocation of resources. But however the commission wants me to do it, I'd be happy to do that.
It seems that it's a matter best left to your judgment.
Yeah.
It's the feel for a lot of things.
Okay.
And that's,
Right.
I think it would be best left to your judgment.
Okay.
All right.
I agree on that.
Commissioner Stebbins, does that answer your question, or did you have more that you wanted to pursue there?
No, it does. I was hoping to find, get some feeling as if to, or what I assume is our shared interest in leaving the RFA2 deadline where it is when you start to back out the 60 and 90 days from that to consummate a host community agreement and schedule a ballot question whether, and that's going to be a driver for our applicants. People in communities are pretty smart when they see things aren't complete or they don't have the complete picture. But for your purposes, wanting you to feel comfortable with the timeline for your allocation of resources is key.
Well, I think Commissioner McHugh's comments that we know this is somewhat flexible and we'll have to evaluate. I think that he's made that pretty clear, and I'm comfortable with that.
All right, so are we coalescing around a plan or coalescing around an approach?
I think we are. I think the date would be the one piece in question.
The date would be the one piece in question. I'll go along with that. Did we conclude? It was only you and I that agreed, Commissioner, relative to the 400,000.
The 400,000 is, the deadline was the deadline.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's where I come back to.
Well, that's where I am.
Okay. Commissioner.
You're not invited to speak,
No,
Ms.
wait a minute,
Whitman.
wait a minute.
If it's not mentioned prior to your decision, then it's impossible to mention it after the fact. There's 2 points I wish you to take into consideration with respect to just that time frame.
Right.
November 4th, there was an initiative, a referendum statewide, in which the people of Massachusetts deliberated whether or not they even want expanded gaming here at all. That stopped the clock, stalled it certainly, for a lot of people making their plans, and certainly realistically in the real world of private business and the fundraising and financing thereof, there's not a lot of people who want to put out an awful lot of money when a month or 2 from now the state may say no. That puts us into November, where people then look around and see the changing of the guards all around, and this continues. We're then into December, in which one is getting started again. But you have the holidays. You have an awful lot of private business people that are away from December 15th to January 15th. I requested in December, in reality, that this early January not be the date. It's the worst time in the year to do any kind of business here in Massachusetts and New England. Everybody is away. I got to tell you, I got to share it with you and be as frank as you are and open with us. Notwithstanding, people have gone forward. I don't know when the others got notice that the process would in fact then begin 1 week after New Year's, January 9th. You've got people jumping here. Appeared at the scoping meeting.
Okay.
Got whatever information.
We
No, I'm just going to finish
understand.
this point if I may,
We
please, sir.
really have heard
My
you. Now, would you
point
get
is
to the?
this, I have, in my case, I've not asked for 2 months
Right,
for anything.
Right.
I have it underway right now.
right, okay.
And the only thing that made it impossible, an act of God, from doing so was that blizzard. Otherwise, you would have had it.
Okay.
And that's the only
Okay.
point in my case. So
We understand that.
the application is there, the fee is there. It's
Great.
a matter of a couple of days.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Now, have we coalesced now, did we finish the discussion about the date?
We need to finish that discussion.
All right, so let's finish. I'm inclined to say that the date, the January 30th date, was the January 30th date for the application and the fee. And our regulations contemplate extensions only after both of those things are done. So I'm inclined to do that.
I'll go along with that.
Commissioner Stebbins?
I would agree with that.
All right. Commissioner Cameron?
I'm going to make it 4.
All right. So I would anticipate then, and I think we've been at this long enough, so I think we ought to try to put, well, we can take it however long we want, but I think we ought to try to put square corners on it. I think the plan around which we've coalesced is that whoever paid the fee and filed an application by January 30th is in. that Director Wells will promptly send out another more particularized deficiency notice as to the elements that are missing and that she needs to have in order to do a completed suitability examination, that the deadline for responding to her and providing those materials will be, I said the 15th, I just looked at the 15th, it's a Sunday, will be the 16th. That'll give that additional weekend to do it. And that we will not move the RFA to date now. Is that, have I stated what the plan
So that's
around which we've coalesced is?
5 weeks, is that what we're talking?
Yeah.
Just for my purposes, my clarification, the combination of Somerset and Crossroads, that they meet those requirements?
Well, we've closed the application fee piece, and somehow they've got to figure out what they're going to do
Okay.
it is what it is.
Okay.
They've got to figure it out, and we're not going to dictate how they do figure it out.
Just to be clear, we're holding fast to the RFA2 deadline.
Right.
That's correct.
As of now, if something
Right.
changes because
Right.
of resources, we have
Right.
the ability, but for now,
Right.
we are not inclined to change that.
Right.
As long as the only discussion around potentially moving that is subject to our available resources and nothing else, if that's your intent.
Right. Okay, let's, somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
I defer to you after my efforts this morning. I think you can put it together.
Well,
I can do that.
pardon me?
Do we-
I can do that.
Do it.
So I move that we hold fast to the deadline for the application fee and the application itself. And we are now authorizing Director Wells to send out deficiency letters for those pieces of the application which are incomplete at this time, and that the deadline to have a full submission is March 16th, 2015.
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously, and that's how we will handle Region C. All right. That brings us to the end of our agenda, I believe. Is there any further business that we need to discuss, take up? All right, I'd hear a motion then to adjourn.
So moved?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.